I'd like to call the meeting to order. The Board of Leavenworth County Commissioners would like to invite everyone to stand for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to begin with a moment of silence, please. Do a roll call. Start with Jeff Colson.
Here.
Vicki Cos.
Here.
Doug Smith's present. Chad Chimke.
Here.
And Mike Steedner. For the record, all 5 commissioners are present. I'd like to open up the public comment portion of our meeting. At this time, any citizen desiring to speak on an item that is directly relevant to the county commission business may do so at this time. A speaker shall refrain from making personal, rude, or slanderous remarks against any person. Individuals, personnel issues, and pending legal matters shall not be discussed at this time, including the citizen comment portion of our meeting. So anyone wishing to speak, please come forward and state your name.
Morning. Ben Morgan, 12548, 158th Street.
Morning.
I have some information to share with you with a visual aid that I don't believe would be as understandable if not seen in person. I respectfully ask that I could share some information with you quickly, and then if you have questions, you could ask me afterwards. Crystalline silica is one of the most common minerals found on the earth. Minerals like sand, stone, granite, mortar, and concrete contain crystalline silica. According to the Mining and Quarrying Occupational Health and Safety Committee, crystalline silica may become respirable-sized particles when workers undertake high-energy operations such as mining, quarrying, or hauling any materials that contain crystalline silica. At that point, the mineral becomes respirable crystalline silica, or RCS. Since 1974, NIOSH has recommended an exposure limit for RCS of 50 micrograms per cubic meter of air for an 8-hour day. OSHA adopted this standard and mandated it into effect in June of 2018. I want to pass around a couple of vials that are created by a laboratory to replicate some volumes of RCS. The first vial represents 50 micrograms. Take your time and look real close because it's real hard to see. It's nearly impossible. That's the maximum permissible exposure limit for an 8-hour day. The second vial is representative of 12.5 milligrams. This is illustrative of the yearly maximum amount of RCS that one could be exposed to. These vials are representative of the maximum exposure that would be allowed under federal mandate for a daily working shift on weekdays only. Residents along that sand hauling route or in the vicinity of a sand quarry mining 2,000 tons each day could be exposed to for 24 hours each day all year long. The Mining and Quarrying Occupational Health and Safety Committee also states RCS particles are particles that are smaller than 10 microns in size, enabling these particles to reach deep into the human lungs. How big is 10 microns? Well, human hair is 50 to 70 microns in diameter, and a grain of fine sand from a beach is about 90 microns in diameter. The smallest particles of silica scale out at around 2.5 microns and are considered the deadliest. These are about 1/100th of the diameter of a human hair. Similar to regular dust becoming airborne, the RCS particles can travel great distances with the slightest breeze. From there, particles that are not inhaled deep into a resident's lungs may be clinging in their yards, rooftops, HVAC systems, vehicles, and trees, concentrating and waiting for a breeze or passing vehicle to send it airborne again. The smaller particulate matter of 2.5 microns can stay airborne for days or weeks. Once this deadly dust enters our lungs, our body's natural defense system encapsulates them where they cannot be expelled. From there, scar tissue forms, reducing the ability of our lungs to take in oxygen. This triggers the development of a variety of diseases, including silicosis and lung cancer. Silica-related lung disease is incurable and can be fatal. In fact, it kills hundreds of workers in the U.S. each year. NIOSH has estimated that at least 2.2 million workers in the mining and construction industries are exposed to RCS each year. When the concentrations of these tiny particles are intensified around a sand quarry and sand hauling route, the consequences can be lethal to many. Those with asthma, the elderly, and children are particularly at risk. Children have smaller airways and breathe more air per body weight than adults. The penetration of the dust into their tiny lungs is greater than in adults exposed to the same concentration. The City of DeSoto is looking at passing a bond which will encompass various improvements and additions to their parks right alongside the river and well within range of airborne particles. I also can't help but point out the Great Loft Golf Course and its patrons. How sadly ironic would it be to expose these people to such deadly airborne particles when they presume they're in the outdoors for fresh air and exercise? MSHA enforces control of airborne exposure to harmful airborne contaminants. According to the MSHA public records, this subpart has been violated by Kaw Valley companies 19 times, with the most recent violation taking place 3 months ago in December of 2019. Additionally, Kaw Valley has had 2 federally reported violations of the Clean Air Act within the last 3 years, as reported by the EPA. Please do not put our children, our families, our community, neighboring communities, and even those driving through our county at risk. This is a very serious consideration that I'm asking you to take into account. You guys have the authority to protect the public health and safety of our community as well as our quality of life. Thank you so much in advance for doing that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can we get documentation on the
Yes.
the 19 violations and the other?
Absolutely. I'm gonna send all this to you. This is kind of a summary of it. I got quite a bit of information here, so you can tell I was trying to race
All right.
through it. I'm
I
gonna
just
email
like
that to you
that
today.
documentation of that.
Absolutely. Yeah. I have all the references and all that
All right.
information.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for your time.
Anyone else wishing to speak in public comment?
I don't hardly see anything in there. Thanks.
Oh, good morning, everyone. My name's Tom Boffman. I live at 19133 Amelia Earhart Road, Leavenworth. I built my house out there in '99, and that's about the time I started using the county transfer station, hauling my own trash. I go out there and pick up firewood, and that's a good service that you have for the citizens of the county out there able to go pick up firewood. Now, there lies my problem. Friday, me and my wife were out there hauling trash, and went and talked to the lady at the desk there and told her we were going to go haul firewood. And went down there and backed up to a wood pile and started loading wood in my truck. About that time, county employee Jim Anderson came down.
No, we cannot mention personnel in this.
All right, well, I won't say. A county employee came and parked my truck in, rolled down his window, and started yelling at us. Told us we were at the employee wood pile, and we were not allowed to take wood out of there. I apologized to him, told him I didn't know there was an employee wood pile out there, and I was walking back to my car. That's when he told me I had to unload the 6 pieces of wood I already had in my truck. When I told him no, he slammed the gear shift lever into park, opened the door, jumped out of his car, yelled at me and my wife, and threatened to have us arrested for stealing his personal firewood. Why is this taking place at a county facility? Why are taxpayers being harassed out there? Why are county employees gathering and protecting their wood while they're on county time? That's all I'd like to know this morning. I feel I was assaulted out there. When I called Miss Sandovar, I'm sorry, she's the supervisor out there, but I called the supervisor of the county transfer station. And all she told me is, well, we'll just stop letting the general public gather wood out there. That'll solve the problem. So a county employee gets caught doing something wrong, and instead of telling them, no, you can't do that anymore, you take that service away from the rest of the taxpayers in the county so this employee can keep doing what he's continuing to do? Is that good government? Is that what this committee stands for? That's all I had to say this morning.
Did you address this with the county administrator?
Yes, I did. In fact, I called him Friday morning, and he told me there should not be an employee woodpile out there. But this brings up a whole host of problems that need to be put on an agenda. Number one, there is payroll theft going on out there. These employees were gathering wood. They were defending their woodpile while they were on county time in a county vehicle. And as a tax-paying citizen of this county, who is very concerned about the amount of property tax he pays. Maybe we have too many employees out there if they have time to gather wood and harass taxpayers. And I was just wondering if this could be put on an agenda so we can discuss it further.
I would just recommend having Mr. Lawfrey investigate this and come back with the findings on this.
I would like to be followed up on this. I would like a letter or something from the commission. I intend to keep using the transfer station out there. And I don't want to have to carry my handgun with me and protect myself when I gather wood.
Okay.
Because this gentleman jumped out of the truck, I thought he was going to attack me and my wife. He was yelling and screaming, his face was red, spittle was flying out of his mouth. I stood in between him and my wife because I thought he was going to attack us.
I think this will be handled administratively, and we will get information back to you.
All right. Thank you very much.
All right.
Thank you.
This is a shame that this happened in this county.
Thank you for bringing it to our attention. Anyone else from the public wishing to speak at this time?
Hello, my name is Ralph Wiggins, 12151 DeSoto Road, Midwood, Kansas. I'm speaking about the Lake Sand Quarry proposed, and basically what I want to do today is I've got letters that I would like to make sure gets in the public record. There's even a statement that says that I would like it to be put in the public record. It's front and back, and I'd like to give this to you guys if I could, one for each of you.
Just pass it around.
So I'll make sure it's in there. I know there are people that are watching, kind of keeping track of the trains at 161st Street. And while I do work part-time and I'm not around a lot, I know Monday morning, when I got home from working out about 6 o'clock, there was a train that blocked that track from 6 to 9:30. Last night, there was a train from 2:30 to 5. So these trains, they just stop right there and block that track. And so if you appreciate if you guys would read that letter, thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak?
Good morning. I'm Tracy Denver at 16904 Kreider Road.
Morning.
Last week I sent an email to all of you commissioners and the staff. It was acknowledged that it was received. Commissioner Smith, you stated that in your email response that you would be discussing this at last week's meeting. And that was not the case. Therefore, I'm going to read the email so that it's on public record. It says, I am contacting you about the discussion at the last BOCC meeting on February the 12th regarding the possibility of limiting an interested party's right to give testimony at the upcoming public hearing regarding the Kaw Valley Lenape Sand Quarry, plus limiting a speaker to one per household. What the heck? All interested parties have a right to speak at a public hearing. Isn't that the purpose of a public hearing and the notification process via mail and by posting a sign at the said property? The process is to allow any interested parties the right to be heard whether they are for or against a property change or SUP. It is prejudice to arbitrarily change the process because you don't want to hear from the interested parties that will be impacted by the sand quarry. All the commissioners were voted into office by citizens of this county. As representatives of the citizens, you are obligated to listen to everyone that has an interest at any public hearing. I have attended multiple BOCC meetings, along with reviewing video footage of other BOCC meetings. Upon observing these meetings, the following have been allowed to speak: the applicants, those in favor of, those opposed, within 1,000 feet, and anyone else that would be considered interested parties. Not at one time did the BOCC limit one speaker per household. According to the Kansas statutes 12757B requires at any public hearing held to consider a proposed rezoning, an opportunity shall be granted to interested parties to be heard. In Article 22, Sections 2 and 3 of the Zoning and Subdivision Regulations relating to SUPs, a public hearing occurs at the Planning Commission level. The interested parties did voice their concerns at the Planning Commission meeting. However, the meeting was held in July of 2019. The record of hearing is now insufficient due to the significant changes in Kaw Valley's ever-changing proposal. Since the inception of this ill-thought-out project, Kaw Valley has submitted 4 different proposals for each SUP. Each proposal was lacking and/or vague in details. In order to ensure that all interested parties are afforded the statutory right to be heard on all of the relevant issues, additional testimony is necessary. Also, the statute states, statute refers to interested parties. Since this operation will impact a greater area than 1,000 feet, I would argue that interested parties extend much further, nor shall you limit one speaker per household. This SUP is completely different than giving approval for a home office or dog daycare. This SUP should not be taken lightly, and since it has a negative impact on the area for 25 plus years. With that being said, the planning and zoning, they've released the formal public hearing notice for Kaw Valley for that meeting to be held on April the 15th. The last sentence of that public notice states, all interested persons are invited to attend the meeting if they wish to comment on this request. Those interested parties and myself would like to know what the procedure you plan to follow on the upcoming public hearing. And at this time, too, there is not a sign at the said property with notification.
We were going to discuss this in administrative business today. Gotten notes from some commissioners and some number of parcels in that. So we are discussing it today in administrative business.
Are we going to be notified of those? Are you going to do it today in this meeting?
But I'm not saying there's going to be a decision today. We're going to discuss it.
Okay, so when a decision is made, will the public be notified, or
probably put it on the agenda?
Yeah, you'll know. We'll make a decision publicly.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak?
Good morning. Nancy Carpenter, 14681 Kreider Road.
Morning.
I brought you some pictures to look at while I speak. And before I get formally started, I wanted to thank Crystal. She entertained me in her office this morning and helped me to get the problems with the files from Kaw Valley straightened out, and I appreciate it very much.
Was there food involved?
No, there was no food. There was no food.
Yeah,
We did talk
what kind
about
of entertaining
pizza.
can it be?
So and also just to remind you that hardbound book, or the spiral-bound book that Kaw Valley gave you is not the same as the electronic document. So it would be nice to know which we're supposed to look at, because they're not the same.
The same
So
information
Nancy,
is contained.
No, it is not.
Nancy, real quick though, so was the file corrupted, or
The
was
file
it
was corrupt on the disk or the drive that I was given. Yes.
on the one that you were given?
Yes.
Okay. But you were able to access what you needed to here?
Yes, we double checked so I can update the public and we can all have those files.
And the main difference was the culvert
The culvert
study.
was not there, and there was an entire document of about, well, I thought it was going to be 56 pages. I think it's maybe 80 that was not in.
And what was that about?
It was the narrative, the documents and letters, the permissions from the state. That was the corrupt file. But now we were able to access it again. Thank you, Crystal, for taking the time to do that.
But you have that, Crystal, so we can get a copy of that document she's talking about. Okay.
Thank you, Crystal.
Okay, it should come to no surprise to you that I have been studying the Lake Sand Quarry documents provided by Kaw Valley and sealed by an engineer with Platt and Strobel. The traffic impact study dated January 9th, 2020 is of particular interest to me. There are two photographs of 158th Street in the study. They're on that paper that you have. One taken at the northern end just south of Loring and the other at the southern end of the road. Page 13 shows a diagram of a typical section of 158th Street. It details a 2-foot paved shoulder next to a 1 to 4 foot graded shoulder with a side slope beyond that. The accompanying text does make an acknowledgement that some areas only have the minimum shoulder width and a narrow break from the side slope. It also says the sides appear to be graded to a recoverable slope of 4 to 1. I take recoverable to mean a slope from which a vehicle could successfully remount the paved surface if it ran off the road. I would be remiss if I waited until April 15th public hearing to tell you that this information is incorrect. I know this because Sarah Williams and I spent 2 afternoons taking measurements on 158th Street. As we doubted the accuracy of the claims on page 13, On January 15th, both Commissioner Kaz and Commissioner Shimke encouraged us to not go out to take measurements because it's dangerous, but we really didn't have a choice. We didn't have vests either, but we had bright-colored hats. The 158th Street of the proposed route is just over a mile long. On our first afternoon, we walked 3/10 of a mile from the northern end and randomly measured looking for a recoverable roadside. The flip side of that paper shows a picture of us doing that. We took dozens of pictures and found no spot that had a 4-to-1 or flatter slope, meaning that along this typical stretch of 158th Street, if a car or truck goes off the road, in all likelihood, it will not be able to safely make it back onto the road surface. On our second afternoon, we walked 3/10 of a mile from the southern end and randomly measured looking for a 2-foot paved shoulder. Again, we took dozens of pictures and found only one spot right beside a driveway where there was a 2-foot paved shoulder. At places, the paved shoulder was as narrow as 4 inches. Beyond the paved shoulder, packed gravel was found. Even combining the paved shoulder and the packed gravel, we did not find a 2-foot edge. As we did our shoulder measurements, we also did random recoverable slope measurements. We found one area that was barely passed as recoverable. We also found fresh tire marks at a spot where it was obvious that a vehicle had not recovered without assistance. On the 2 stretches we studied, we found that the typical road was nothing like the one described on page 13 of the traffic impact study. The funny part is we studied the safest sections of the road. We avoided the in-between section where at places there is no shoulder and a sheer drop-off. We knew that would be extremely dangerous to walk. You have spoken of wanting to look at evidence. You have asked us to let you know when we find problems with this proposal. This is a huge problem. There are supposed facts in the traffic impact study that were not checked and that are not verifiable. If you look to this road description in your decision-making process, you will be relying on inaccurate information. I've debated about what I'd like to see happen to rectify this matter. As I talked it over with my husband, he reminded me of the 1981 Hyatt Regency tragedy where engineering inaccuracies were ignored. 114 people died.
Thank you, Nancy. Your time's up.
May I have time from someone, please?
No, we do not do that.
It is my hope
You're
that
done,
you take
Nancy.
this information to your consulting firm for discussion.
Your public comments over,
document.
Nancy.
I would like this to go in the public record.
Anyone else wishing to speak at this time?
I do have a question, Mark. The study that was done, was it by, what engineering group did this study?
I think you have it.
Is it true? Well, I forgot the name.
Cook, Flat, and Strobel.
Right. And is that Call Valley's engineering firm?
That's who they've engaged to do the work.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Good morning. My name is Ed Irvin. I'm a resident of Leavenworth County. My address is 13561 246th Street.
Okay.
Good morning. And I would like to thank the commissioners and the public for allowing me to speak here on public comment here this morning. My day job is I work for the USDA. I'm a government employee. I took off here to be here today, and I've actually talked to a couple of you commissioners before. And my wife and I, we started a winery down on 246th Street. We're trying to do something a little bit different. We've got tomato wine, we've got apple wine, we've got blackberry wine. We're trying to do something a little bit different. But we live on this 246th Street.
Did you say tomato wine?
Yes.
That's different.
I've actually got a bottle I can show you.
We can serve it right here.
Pop a cork.
But anyway, I came up to, we want to try to make our business viable. We're trying to take, our product, from the ground all the way to the bottle and trying to be innovative. Agriculture is in my blood. I've graduated from Kansas State University. I've been, a citizen of Kansas for my entire life of 60 years. And, we moved out to southwest Leavenworth County because we really liked it out there. I mean, we thought it was, had a good rural setting, and, we just really felt like we were at home. Manhattan's my home, but this is my new home. And, we want to get along with everybody. We want to make this work. But, one of the things that we have, we live on 246th Street, which just happens to have a designation of being a minimum maintenance road. Well, we have a house right north of us that it's only a quarter of a mile away, or a third of a mile, I guess. And the minimum maintenance sign is right after their house. Okay, so there's just a short stretch in there. And if anybody's ever been on 246th Street, and I know that the school bus goes on that regularly, I know that UPS goes on it regularly, FedEx goes on it regularly. We can't get any mail out there because it's designated as a minimum maintenance road. Well, I decided that my wife and I decided we wanted to go ahead and try to get a little bit more into our business, and so we put in a special use permit. When I put this special use permit in, and I understand I can't use any personnel names, but I was told I was going to need to get a pre-planning meeting, okay? And so I was with great hope to go to the pre-planning meeting. I had submitted all my paperwork, and I think you know that. But anyhow, I submitted all my paperwork. I went to the pre-planning meeting, and I found out that I wasn't really going to be having a pre-planning meeting. That I was going to be try to be dissuaded from even submitting my special use permit because I live on a minimum maintenance road. And what I found out is that, and like I said, I'm not going to mention any personal names here, but there was basically a conspiracy between 3 different entities within this county to dissuade me from withdrawing my special use permit. Is this what we're doing in the county? Is trying to dissuade people from putting in their special use a good special use permit? Here we are, a legal entity. We have all of our licenses. We have a special. We have a license from the TTB, from the federal government, to have a winery. We have a license from the state of Kansas, the Alcohol Beverage Control. We have a retail sales certificate. But yet we're being held back and being dissuaded from even putting in a special use permit? Is that how we're running business in this county? To dissuade people, legal entities, from putting in a special use permit to try to add to their business? That's all I have to say today. You'll see me again. I'm not going away.
Okay.
I want to get a real pre-planning meeting with a real planner this time.
So,
Thank you.
So Ed, I think maybe it's not a conspiracy. Maybe it's a miscommunication between the parties more so than it's a conspiracy. And I think your letter. I think if you work with this gentleman here and we talk more and communicate, I think that's what needs to happen.
Okay.
Thank you.
Let Mr. Loffer handle it.
Yeah.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak?
Michael Hampton, 15496 Donahue Road. I too live on a minimum maintenance road. It runs about a mile between 155th and 147th. I've emailed Doug Smith a few times, and he knows the situation, but I wanted to make it public record. We moved there, and we've got a new home there. Moved in a couple months ago. My son lives down the road a little ways, and there's another new home going in not too far from us, just east of us. So we've got 3 new homes on pretty much a mud road. It is a minimum maintenance road. There's signage on both ends of it. And it was all agricultural service before we got there. But now we have 3 families on that road and a lot of traffic. And we knew going in what we were dealing with, but the traffic has increased significantly since we've been there. This last freeze and thaw cycle, we saw the bottom fall out of the road pretty much. and would just like to see some improvement there. My son did have to pull an Amazon delivery truck out of the ditch just below his house so he could get out. And we're running into quite a few big vehicles that service Falcon Lakes from Baser. And in this day of GPS, people don't really look at the signage, they look at the GPS, and if it says go down Donahue, that's where they're going to go. So we got a lot of ruts in the road this last go around. And, I haven't talked to planning and zoning or anybody else at this time. I have put a bug in the air of Baser, the city of Baser. I know we're on the boundary line between the two, the city and the county. The city does have a pressurized sewer line that goes down our road, and they have to have access to that. So we've made accommodations to to be open whenever they need to come in for that. But we get a lot of utility trucks, 2-ton and bigger trucks that come in and rut it out. Anyway, I'd like to see something go into planning down the roads where we could either get some gravel, ditches, some kind of improvement, because right now it's pretty much a one-lane mud road. And a couple weeks ago when we had the big thaw, we had a mudathon out there. We had 4-wheel drives, 4-wheelers, a lot of fun time, but a lot of that goes into our driveway. People turn around when they get to my driveway. They don't want to go the rest of the way down the road. So would appreciate some input on that as far as planning. I know that area has a lot of new pavement going in just to the north or to the west of us. Donahue is supposed to be paved, I believe. Mm-hmm. And I don't expect our road to be paved, but I would like to see it improved. Thank you.
Thank you. Are you on the north side of Donahue or the south side?
On the south side.
South side, okay.
No, you're on the north side. On the north side. The new houses are like 3.
So you realize you're in the city of Baser?
No,
not
he's outside.
On the north side of Donahue. What's your address?
15493.
He's east of 155th. I'd recommend you getting with planning, zoning, public works, and see what you can. Maybe we could approve putting your RIF money toward improving that road.
Yeah, I don't think that's a minimum maintenance road.
Yeah,
is it?
It is.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah, my son has 3 young kids. The buses won't come down our road.
Okay.
It is
We would
minimum
like to get
maintenance.
it where the buses would come down.
Okay.
Postal Service comes down.
Well, that's where to start, and then they'll get something to us. Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak public comment?
Good morning. Sarah Williams, 12725 166th Street.
Morning, Sarah.
Good morning. It's my hope that you will take the information that Nancy and I provided you to your consulting firm for discussion and then reject the traffic study document along with any others sealed by the engineer of record. I also suggest that you consult legal counsel as to the process of filing a complaint with the Kansas Board of Technical Professionals against that engineer on behalf of the county. If the county chooses to ignore this matter, it will fall to its citizens to file a complaint. The county chooses to ignore this matter and eventually approves the Lenape Sand Quarry application. You will be culpable when accidents occur that are tied to sand truck traffic being allowed to travel these unsuitable roads. I would like this statement to become part of the development DEB 19-008 public record.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public wishing to speak?
Morning, Commissioners.
Morning,
Joe Herring Surveying, 35 North 5th Street. Today you have dust abatement coming in front of you on limiting the amount. And to go along with that, on larger projects, we had one that came up in a meeting with Public Works and Planning and Zoning. That was about 3,000 linear feet. Mm-hmm. The client is wondering if he could get involved in that. On large projects like that, would a work session work better to have all that happen up here to discuss that process, or do we just keep it with Public Works and have them bring that forward? He was asking for a work session just because of the amount of investment that would incur.
I'm not sure how to answer that because
We have a
our
process
staff
and
is
an application.
limited.
Exactly. Yeah, I know you can only do so much road per year, but and then to be able to discuss payment and some different options that may vary from policy, that takes board approval, of course. So he was
It'd
just
have to be
asking.
a case-by-case basis.
Well, yeah, I mean, it might make sense to look at some type of a threshold, right? So,
And that's what we're
again,
looking at.
right, under a certain amount versus
We can't
larger
take care of that
projects.
here
Yeah.
now.
All right. The other issue is y'all aware of plenty of emails and documents dropped off. The approval of the acceptance of the contract that was entered into between Public Works and my clients down on the little farms. Would appreciate if that was handled today, so they do not have to, so they can market their property and continue to sell lots. I understand that may not be an issue because it's not on the agenda, but they would like to be able to continue marketing. They feel they have an agreed contract, not asking you to waiver from policy, just asking you to enforce a contract that was paid for and entered into. And if not today,
Yeah, I think there's already been some additional discussion since your email, Joe, that if it can't be resolved by staff, then I think the 11th is when we'd expect to see
the 11th is when
Yeah.
it's going to come.
Right.
If that's the case, I know that a phone call has happened where a potential buyer has asked about the road, if it's going to be hard surface or not. If maybe staff can just say it's going to be heard on the 11th, we'll have an answer instead of it's not resolved. Just to not to hinder a sale of a property.
Sure.
So I know it's preferred to have it on the agenda. It's also preferred to have contracts honored when they're entered into.
Understood.
So
I don't have a problem hearing it next week. I know there's a couple gone. I mean,
whatever the board decides, I appreciate
I
that.
think the Commissioner Shimke wanted to be present for that
Okay.
meeting.
all right, it's your call. I'm okay with that. Okay. Thank you, Joe. Is anyone else from the public wishing to speak? All right, then we'll move on to administrative business. Mr. Lawford.
I think the first item on the under administrative business is the traffic safety award presentation.
Mr. Bob Hamilton's going to present that.
Morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
As you said, my name is Bob Hamilton. I'm retired law enforcement, 33 years, and I'm now a law enforcement liaison through the Kansas Department of Transportation. There's 4 of us across the state of Kansas. We're all retired law enforcement, and I have Northeast Kansas that I work with the law enforcement agencies, which one of them happens to be your sheriff's office. We work with AAA insurance and find agencies that we felt went beyond, sort of say, the call of duty for traffic safety. And then we ask those agencies to put in an application for a traffic safety award. This year, your sheriff's office applied and received the award, and they're only one of 13 sheriff's offices in the state of Kansas that's receiving this award this year. Some of the things that they have done to receive this award is they enforce a policy requiring all department employees to wear a seatbelt, working closely with the Pleasant Ridge High School on the highly successful student-led seatbelt use program, which is called SAFE, which is Seatbelts for Everyone, which is one of our highest groups of personnel wearing seatbelts now. Conducting enforcement on Click It or Ticket, which is our seatbelt campaign. Offering a child passenger seat installation. Holding as a Citizens Academy to educate the public on the dangers of DUI and distracted driving. Working with the county signage shop to install safe bicycle route signs. Presenting a special assembly at the Pleasant Ridge High School with guest speakers to educate on the dangers of DUI and distracted driving. I know everybody hates when they get pulled over on the side of the road and maybe receive a citation or just a warning. But a prime example of how things can work out, I'm not going to give you the gentleman's name or tell you where he's from, but at about 10:30 in the morning he was pulled over and given a citation for not wearing his seatbelt. At 2 o'clock he rolled his pickup, had his seatbelt on and walked away. So the job that your officers are doing out here are very, very important to the safety of our people. First of all, I want to salute you as County Commissioners for supporting the Sheriff's Office, because without your support, they wouldn't be able to do the things that they're doing out here. I'd also like to thank Patrol Corporal John McAvoy for completing and submitting the award application. And finally, it's my pleasure to present Sheriff Dedeke with the Gold Traffic Safety Award.
Can we applaud?
Yeah. John doesn't have his camera today. Got your camera? You have to send it to John.
Maybe have him.
And the mic's kind of like having John.
Yeah, I guess. Good.
Good smiles.
I mean, we all know the Sheriff's Department does an excellent job. It's really nice to have someone else recognize it too and get recognition. Mr. Hamilton, thank you for coming up and doing that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well done.
All right. Anything else on administrative business this time, Mr. Lawfrey?
Yes, I have a couple other items actually. Lauren would like to present and have the board approve a high-risk rural roads application. This is signage only. The grant application process ends this Friday, so we need to, if the board approves it, we'd like to get that taken care of today so they can submit the application. We've utilized this program in the past and received some signing. We work with an engineer that is approved through KDOT and has done this for us in the past as well.
Make clear which the route, just so that the public knows for us.
County Route 13 and Route 14, it will be for signage only.
Thank you.
Mark, I sent those to you.
And a new bridge on one of them.
Yes, County Route 14 is Millwood Road, which will contain the new bridge.
And I'll entertain a motion to approve this.
Motion to approve project funding application for the fiscal year 2022 high-risk rural roads.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Voting?
Aye.
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 Thank you, Lauren.
I've got a page on here that I'll need all of you to sign, so
Okay.
I'll get you all after the meeting.
All right.
That's okay.
We have
That'll
a
work.
standing motion to apply for all grants.
Yeah.
Because of
Somebody requested
because of the
it.
process, we have to show them in the minutes that the board
Yeah, that
approved
we
it.
approved it.
Okay.
Okay.
And on the,
I had the public hearing rules as the other item.
okay, well, I was going to ask on the American Legion request funding, how are we going to deal with that?
We were going to have to wait until.
Yeah,
Until all the other applications come in?
Right.
The county clerk is sending out notice to the people who applied last year, letting them know when the deadline would be, and we're shooting for the middle of April, and then it would be on the first meeting in May for approval on any distribution of funds.
Okay.
So just to be clear, the deadline is mid-May.
I believe it's April 15th or 16th, I think. I don't remember the
Okay.
date that the clerk sent out specifically, but then it would be on May 6th for approval, and she is notifying anybody.
Okay, so the Legion's aware of that. American
They
Legion.
will be.
Okay.
They may have sent that in the note before she sent the letter, but they'll be made aware of it.
Okay.
There will be. That's also the same time frame that we use for the historical societies.
Society, sure.
So it's going to just coincide.
Those
Those will
outside
all be on the
agencies.
same.
Okay.
So, I talked to Mark yesterday. I've been getting a lot of calls on roads, and we visited, and I just want to remind people that
Probably not supported.
the county has joined this local road safety plan, and that is ongoing. We, of course, did what we did today. We have the does the basement phases that are going to continue to be worked on. We have Golden Road and several other projects going to be done this year. We have the Olson study that's going to show us the actual costs of maintaining our rural roads that is ongoing. And we have additional projects or phases, including maybe County Road 30, that we're going to be looking into in the future. So those are concrete things that the county is working on in relation to the roads. So just to let everybody know, we are very concerned about the roads.
Eisenhower will go to bed this year.
Right. Just thought because of all the
It will go to bid this year.
Right.
It's got to go to bid this year. And 178 will go to bid this year, I hope. No, it will, correct?
So we are working on
I mean, like I said, we've done talk about 178 longer than it's going to take to build it. So
we are concerned about the roads. We understand the roads are in bad shape, and we're working on it.
Well, 760 miles.
Yeah,
65.
65.
And they're not all 760 miles in bad shape, but there's a good portion.
Well,
just
they're coming out of
Better shape than a lot.
They're in better shape than a lot, yeah.
Right.
Okay, then on our work sessions coming up, we still got Mid-America Regional Council and Fairmount Township we need to schedule.
Fairmount Township has sent us a date that's going to work for them. It'll be coming up in March.
Okay.
I have not heard from Mid-America Regional Council. I've reached out to them a couple of times to set up the meeting.
Well, David Warm, he wasn't there yesterday. He was on vacation.
The response I get is we're working on it. So.
Okay. Oh, so they're going to schedule with us.
Well, they have to let me know the dates they're looking at coming. I mean,
Okay.
All
right.
Yes. Yeah.
We'll get it.
Yep.
All right. And then we were going to talk about the suggested rules for a public hearing. I was hoping David would be back from Codes Court by then. Some of the recommendations I received was, well, you can go ahead and read yours, Mike.
My suggestion was that we allow 2 hours for the proponents and 2 hours from the opponents maximum. 3 minutes are allowed for every citizen, giving priority to those within 1,000 feet, and then those on the road route, and then those that are residents of Leavenworth County. And we asked for documentation that will be provided ahead of time, so that if we decided to take whatever action we decide to take, we'll have the documents ahead of time. And that we make a definite decision that we will either table, recess, or act yes or no on the issue that evening.
Well, I think that's kind of a no-brainer, Commissioner. What will happen after this?
But I didn't think if you can't summarize your thoughts in 3 minutes. I mean, I remember from taking debate in college or in high school, even high school. If you can't summarize your thoughts in 3 minutes, it starts to ramble after 3 minutes. But I don't think we should limit. I think if a husband and wife want to speak, I mean, then they should be allowed to.
Yeah, I think there's been a lot of dialogue, and again, it was more about how much time is going to be set, because ultimately the time is going to dictate how many people we can hear from, regardless of how you set the priority. So it's never been limiting to 15 parcel owners or 500 parcel owners. Only so many parcel owners can speak in a 2-hour time frame, whether that's in opposition or 2-hour time frame in support of. So I mean, at the end of the day, the idea was I thought to hear from as many impacted property owners as possible, and trying to consolidate parcel owners as a relationship or a spouse made some sense. But if everybody disagrees with that, I thought you'd at least be able to hear from more parcel owners. Again, going from 1,000 feet to on the impacted route to anywhere in the greater Leavenworth County. Do we want to exclude if you're from a different county, or?
Well, just you wouldn't have the priority.
Right. Well, I know you're going to be at the end, and I'm saying,
yeah.
You think about it. At the end of the day, when there is an end, that means somebody cannot speak, and maybe it's the person that lives in Riley County.
But I think that's one of the reasons that it's a really good idea to put your thoughts down in writing.
Sure.
And submit them if the time were to run out.
Mm-hmm. I haven't spoken first.
It's been submitted.
It's been submitted for review.
Mm-hmm.
Or, submit it. I think that we've received some things in advance already that individuals have asked to have their letters that they have sent to us placed on the record. And as Krista will tell you, I always forward those with a note that says, please put this in the permanent file for the public record. So I think I had 3 yesterday.
With that being said,
I support different perspectives as well. So there are those that have shared their perspective a dozen times or a couple dozen times, and it's not lost on me. So you want to hear from as many opposing or, again, in support of individuals as we can. And there is no right or wrong way. I mean, we have to prioritize it so that, again, those closest get to speak first. those not as close still get to speak, but whether we put 2 hours or 2 days, we're going to run into someone wanting to speak that isn't given the opportunity.
Okay. But with that being said, when we're talking about your emails being public record, I'd encourage everyone to copy planning and zoning when they email the board or email us individually. Please copy planning and zoning so we make sure it gets into the public record. And I've also, said, set a maximum time for the public hearing and meeting. We'll have to decide that. And you're saying 4 hours. I don't know.
Total.
You're saying that's 4 hours total. But that's for
3-minute time limit per speech.
Okay.
That wouldn't include the presentation of, or would?
Right. That's
I think that would just be the public hearing. I'm not talking about like the call ballot. You mean?
Well, the applicant will have to put on
that. I don't know, Mark. That would typically be separate from the timed period, wouldn't it?
Usually, you would do the public hearing, and then you would allow the applicant their time, so that they can respond to any questions or concerns that came up during the public hearing.
So 4 hours of public hearing. We're starting at 6:30, so now we're at 10:30.
And
we're then going to have 2 hours, or I don't know, an hour. I don't know how long we allow the applicant to present.
I don't think they have.
And I think you also have
you don't have a time limit.
Your discussion time as well. I think you can set a time limit. I mean, that's
I think we're going to want to, because right now we're getting pretty close to midnight already. So.
Yeah. So and then you're going to have your discussion time, which may or may not occur that evening. So I think you have to be cognizant of the start time, because if you start at 6:30, right, you're already at 10:30 just in public hearing time. Then you have the applicant's presentation, which is likely to be close to an hour.
Well, we can't change the start time.
So that would be 11:30. Then you have any debate or discussion time for you all if you do it that night.
Could we start?
You're already past midnight. So
could we alter our start time to 6?
Cannot. We've already sent out.
We've already sent out the public notice. Okay. Oh, that's just who I was wanting to see. Mr. Van
You're 10 minutes too soon.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning. I hate to put you on the spot, but we're talking about parameters of our meeting. By law, everyone within 1,000 feet, correct?
Yes.
They receive notification.
Yes.
When we would also then go to the people affected on the truck route, and then any time left would go to anybody in the county, I guess.
Commissioners, the legal requirements for your public hearing are that those within 1,000 feet have an absolute right to be heard. You, of course, control how the hearing is actually conducted. Traditionally, though, they've been allowed time to speak, either 3 to 5 minutes, depending upon the volume of people speaking. You also publish notice in the newspaper and mail out notice to those persons. The directive that has been passed down from this commission to your staff is that the notice also be provided to those directly adjacent to the proposed haul route to provide them notice as well. Also, you've indicated that you would like more than just the minimum legal requirement with respect to published notice and public notice. So this is also, again, notice of that hearing and an invitation for any and all to either attend or, to perhaps better ensure your testimony is made part of the record, to submit written comments and testimony prior to the hearing. As far as the conduct of the meeting, I have reviewed the suggested rules. They would satisfy the legal requirements. I think logistically there is a time element with respect to the ability of any human to sit and listen and actually absorb information, so that's something that is discretionary on your part. I would suggest that the last sentence contained in the report provided to you by Mr. Lawfrey be heeded. That is, you're not required to make a decision that evening. You're not even required to close the public hearing at that evening. At your discretion, you could table the matter and continue the public hearing. You could close the public hearing and continue the hearing for discussion among the board members. Quite frankly, almost any permutation of those variables as you would choose and deem fit and appropriate to give you time to adequately deliberate on this topic. You're going to be receiving a significant volume of material both by proponents and opponents to the proposition. and I think it's only fair to give yourselves time to render a decision that you deem well advised.
Okay.
And I forgot. Remind me how many people that we have that live within 1,000 feet.
Oh, I wrote that down.
I did too, and I just cannot.
I think there's 17.
About 20.
Parcels.
Approximately 20.
Yeah, around 20.
And along
about
approximately
60 parcels on
60 on the route.
But I don't know if it's 60 residents or it's 60 parcels. That some residents own more than one parcel.
60 property owners, 60 individual property
Yeah.
owners.
So okay. So you're talking 80.
Right.
Right off, just to get that taken care of.
We're not all going to show up.
You don't think?
50 of them will show up, probably. 40, 50.
Okay. Well, we don't know how many's going to show up.
I'm just giving,
but
we know 100%.
No, and some people
does
have multiple.
Leavenworth County, do they typically have a set of guidelines that they use at every public hearing or every special use permit that we follow?
Commissioners, you've adopted no resolution as to how you conduct these. They're generally conducted on, I've used the phrase, as-needed basis. Traditionally, though, you have limited comment to roughly 5 minutes. Again, a 3-minute limitation, given the anticipated number of speakers, would be appropriate. And how you conduct the meeting, again, is at your discretion. The concept is, though, to give everybody a voice. They can give that voice either through oral testimony or, again, I'll stress what is best is written testimony submitted to you prior to the hearing so that you have the opportunity to actually review it while you're also hearing the oral testimony.
Well, 80 people.
But just walking through that's 40 people at 3 minutes.
Yeah, when we can't, I mean, there's no, that's 4 hours.
Just the 80 people is 4 hours.
So that's not,
3
everybody
minutes
is not going to, this would not have an opportunity to give oral comment, but the written comment is something that we can, I keep bringing it back to that because that's something that we can actually look at and read and contemplate ahead of time before we hear all of the other things that are coming within that hearing. So I would really suggest that if you have something that you really want us to have an opportunity to really look at and study, provide it to us in writing, which some have already done, and that's...
Right. And do we know how much time the applicant would need to give their presentation to maybe answer any questions?
I'm not aware of any declared position on their part. It could be inquired as to how much time they would think they would need to present and perhaps whether they'd want to reserve any rebuttal time. But again, that's at your discretion.
Okay. Could planning and zoning reach out to the applicant and ask?
Well, I'm going to say,
time?
I mean, in my opinion, we should not set aside any more for public comment than 2 hours per side, just so that we can conduct the rest of the business to whatever extent that we can, whether we render a decision that night or not, or, you know, move it to another meeting to finalize our decision.
So does the applicant usually speak first and give their presentation?
No.
Commissioners, again, that's at your discretion. Again, traditionally, and please correct me, generally you receive a report from your staff in conjunction with the written materials that have been presented to you. You then allow or invite the applicant to speak. You then invite those proponents of the proposition, particularly those who are within the required distance, to be given an opportunity to speak. Then you invite those persons, again with preference to those who are given statutory preference, to speak in opposition. You allow generally some rebuttal time. You could even allow rebuttal, but at some point you do have to close the hearing. And then during that period of time, you are allowed to ask questions of the speakers. At the time you close the public hearing, you then begin the deliberation among yourselves.
Okay.
So let me ask you this. If we have 2 hours on proponents, 2 hours on opponents, and let's say we have the 2 hours for the opponents is totally filled, but the proponent side, there's not, that time is not totally filled. Does that time just then go back, or how does that typically work?
That would be at your discretion, Commissioners. Again, there are no fully established rules. if I could offer this thought, as a practical matter, I think you should anticipate that it will not be a 50-50 split in persons speaking in favor as opposed to people speaking in opposition. So you might, if you were going to provide a 3-hour hearing, I would suggest it be a 2-to-1, a 4-hour hearing, a 3-to-1.
I just wondered if there wasn't more testimony from the public that was in proponents, if some of that other time could then go to additional time for people that were here.
Yeah. We don't know how much time the applicant's going to request to give a presentation.
Would it make sense, David, if we set 4 hours as a public hearing time, right? Whichever side, if it's going to be the applicant or proponent side, making sure that that's not to exceed. Again, I don't agree with a 2-to-1 or a 3-to-1. Now, whether or not anybody can use the time that's allotted, right? So if 30 minutes is allotted, if that's all that's used, then there's 3.5 hours left of those that would like to speak in opposition. But at no point in time allow it to go further than 50% of the allotted time. So not to exceed 2 hours.
Absolutely.
Because we're then going to switch to opposition, regardless of whether you're a quarter of the way through your presentation or 3/4 of the way through your presentation.
Commissioners, if I could offer this, since you have been sitting in a quasi-judicial capacity, when argument is made before either the Court of Appeals or the Kansas Supreme Court, and certainly in federal courts, each side is allotted equal time. Generally, however, the proponent, that party that has the burden of persuasion, is allowed to also reserve rebuttal time. So if the proponent were given an hour, they could split it into 30-30, 45-15, however they would choose. And quite frankly, the other side could do the same as well. I think the real key is that both sides be given an adequate opportunity to speak. Now, again, the applicant should be submitting to you detailed enough written information that the oral presentation would be for the point of clarification, not providing key details to you. And again, for opponents of the proposition, the same rule would apply, that written testimony should provide the substance, the oral testimony to basically illuminate what parts of that are most significant.
Okay. So we all agree at about 4 hours? We're all in agreement on that. And then basically 2 hours, and if they don't use the 2 hours, the other side can use it.
But they
the remaining time.
Either side just gets to reserve the amount of time that they feel they need.
Well, but I'm just saying, if they use 2 hours, everybody uses 2 hours.
But if there's time left over after.
And are we saying 3 minutes?
3 minutes. Well, because even for everybody everybody showed up. I mean, we're talking. If everyone were to show up and
one person per household.
One person per household, we are exceeding 4 hours for just public comment that doesn't even include any comment that would be made by the applicant.
Well, I don't know if I agree with the one person per household, because I think there's spouses that want to,
Mm-hmm. I think just using that as an example.
Right.
Even at one per household, you couldn't get through.
You could.
No, we're just doing by the 3 minutes.
No, we're just doing by that. So if more than one person per house, that's just using the time and being cognizant of the fact that.
But like I said,
priority is given to the 1,000 feet. And if the 2 family members or 3 family members, if someone's over 8, they want to come in and speak, or whoever, maybe how many house, but once that time is up, it's up.
Okay.
And then we'll see how it goes.
And what about the fact, I think we want to put a limit. You can't yield your time.
Right.
Right.
But it is specifically per individual this much time, 3 minutes. Who stands up to speak? What do you think?
Is there anything else we haven't covered?
Well, I think you need to, again, keep in mind how late that puts you into the evening.
I know.
So, and by the time you hear a presentation from staff, the applicant has time, I think you need to think about that and make sure that
we have a coffee pot.
That's where you want to be.
Yeah,
and then any discussion and debate that you all have is also need to be added on there at the end as well.
And someone may get called into the railroad.
Somebody's probably going to lay off.
Okay.
So,
all right.
It's your public hearing and your meeting. However you want to proceed, we'll just make sure it's.
I just think that we need to limit it to 2 hours for proponents, 2 hours for opponents. Period. No sharing. But if you want to come, individuals who are here listening, if you wanted to come up with a spokesperson who spoke on behalf of all of you to give, a block of time, give us, that would be, give us a list of who it is. Give us a list ahead of time of who you're speaking for, and you could have a little bit more time to give your thoughts more clarity. I mean,
that seems fair if they did it ahead of time, but I also think the documents should be in a week ahead of time too. Because if we were going to make an action that night, and we can't be looking at documents that night, and
I'm just saying, not at the last minute saying I'm giving my time to yielding my time to. No, if you want, I'm just kind of tossing about things. If you want to yield your time as a group,
but only if it's approved ahead of time.
Right, if it's approved ahead of time, make contact so that we know.
It'd be too confusing.
Yeah, it would be too confusing. But if you organized and had.
We have somebody that wants to speak for 12 minutes or...
Right, but then that takes 12 minutes off of...
The 2 hours.
The 2 hours. Okay. But we need to know about it in advance so that we're not scrambling to try to figure out...
I just want to be clear. I mean, we've been receiving written and oral testimony for many months. I mean, we receive written, if not daily, pretty close to daily, or multiple times a day. Yep. And none of that is any less credible. I want to make that clear because we are all very email proficient.
So we do agree there's 4 hours total.
So if that's what we're all kind of consensus, if maybe Mark could put it in writing and we could approve it at our next meeting and make it formal.
Sure.
Okay. And then I know there's been a lot of concern about how we might communicate that. So once it's drawn up and a motion's made and approved, outside of it being in public meeting and on YouTube, what else can we do in the way of
put it on your
website? Okay.
An announcement that's the amount of time that's been approved,
okay.
and the planning, date and the time, and
and planning and zoning will reach out to the applicant to see how they want to proceed with it.
Okay. No.
Public comments over.
Will we be allowed to have PowerPoint presentations?
They typically have been in the past, haven't they?
Commissioners, I would only suggest this. You certainly may. The amount of time that would be taken to set up and deal with I shouldn't say every, but it's not unknown for there to be technical difficulties with respect to PowerPoint presentations. That time will be lost. So it's at your discretion whether you wish.
Maybe that should be if you decide you're going to have somebody do a block of time ahead of time, then that's the ones that you would do your.
But that goes off of the 2 hours.
Right.
That has been allowed.
And Commissioners, again, a PowerPoint presentation, we're all familiar with what they are, can be submitted in advance as a part of written testimony.
But if they want to use it as...
Okay.
Yeah.
But we need to know in advance.
And would that be 7 days?
Typically, when you're bringing files in and using our equipment,
we
have an advance so that our IT department can verify there's no virus or anything like that. So it could be pretty challenging allowing that.
Mark brings up a very valid point. Any PowerPoint presentation would have to be scanned for viruses. That's not to insinuate in any way that people would intentionally bring any malware in, but it can occur, and you've required that it be provided to the IT department for scanning for virus prior to the hearing. And I would suggest that you perhaps set a
7 to 10
deadline
days
for the submission.
Right, give them time to review it and make it available. Okay.
Does that work for you?
Yeah.
Well, we'll get some details on it. More.
Well, but we've set the amount of time that's going to be allowed.
4 hours.
So.
All right. Any other administrative business this time?
I have none, and just for clarification, that wouldn't be on next week's meeting. It would be the following week because two commissioners are going to be.
Okay, that's right.
Unless you don't care if we, if you get it in advance to read, to say yes or no, I mean, to mark.
I mean, I think we came to consensus. He's just going to
write it. Yes, but we also haven't heard from the applicant. Planning and Zoning was going to reach out.
Oh, okay.
Well, we can do it on the 11th.
That's fine.
It's no hurry. It's not like
no.
The 11th's fine.
11 works. All right.
Okay. All right. Then consent agendas. Commissioners had a chance to look at the consent agenda? Or items on the consent agenda, I should say.
Yep.
Any questions or concerns? And I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I move we accept the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Voting?
Aye.
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 Aye. Okay. All right. We are ready for the sheriff. Sorry to keep you waiting so long, Sheriff.
No problem. Good morning.
Morning.
I'm sure all of you recall that in the area of 2008, a sales tax was implemented in Leavenworth County to replace the radio system in use by not only the Sheriff's Office, but a lot of public safety. And it was definitely a needed thing. The system was failing and no longer supported. And so the system that we went to was a part of a statewide system. The state of Kansas had implemented a new P25 compliancy system. In short, what it does is it allows us to talk to partners outside of Leavenworth County. It also allows us to talk to our officers outside of Leavenworth County, whether it be on a inmate transport across the state of Kansas, something along those lines. We're able to speak with them. In times of disaster such as tornado, we're able to talk with our partners from outside of the region as well. So, like anything else technology-based, it has a lifespan. And we were informed last year that the system that we currently operate under was coming due for an upgrade to improve that lifespan. Means we are connected in part to the state system. The state was not ready to move forward with it at that time, so it was put on hold until this year. We were recently visited by representatives from Motorola. That is the company from which our system is. And we're, again, informed of some of the upgrades that are going to be needed. In short, and trying to keep all the technical terms out because I probably fail to try to explain it to you exactly what it is, but the routes of connection, the T1 lines, the microwave systems, the IP lines need to be replaced and upgraded to current technology. So obviously that comes at a cost. We have 8 sites, 8 towers within Leavenworth County or on the verge of Leavenworth County that have compromised our system or compose our system. And that's what gives us the interoperability to talk to other agencies, other governmental divisions outside of Leavenworth County. And so in order to upgrade those, we're looking at a price tag of $1,493,092. So the obvious question is, what if we don't do the upgrades? In essence, what happens is we go to a site trunking mode. And what that means is we no longer have that interoperability to operate or to communicate with agencies outside of Leavenworth County. We have our ring of towers within Leavenworth County, and we would still be able to communicate within that. But in essence, you've bought a really high dollar car, but you don't have wheels on it to drive it if we don't do this upgrade system. The Some of the other things that we lose is there is maintenance, routine maintenance that's scheduled in via a computer that is done remotely. So if we were in a site trunking scenario, we have to actually go to each tower and do the maintenance or check on the maintenance on a weekly basis. It also gives us alarms when there's an issue with the tower, whether a generator is not properly functioning, levels of fuel for the generator, that type of thing. If there's a problem out there, right now we get an electronic message that there's an issue, and then we can appropriately address it as quickly as possible. In reality, without that, we won't know unless we are out there every day to do that. So there is some functionality that would be lost. As I understand it, in the original tax from 2008, there remains a balance in the area of $1 million that could be applied towards it. Motorola does offer financing for governmental agencies, and essentially anywhere from 1 to 10 years is what they're agreeable to do. The terms of repayment would not become effective until 1 year after date of signing the agreement. So if we said, okay, today is the day that we want to do this scenario, then the first payment would not be due till a year from today. So what I asked for was 3 different options of what I thought would probably be the most likely, but then again, I'm not sitting beyond the desk up there. I asked for a 1 year, 2 year, and 3 year option with $1 million down payment. 1 year would leave a balance of $493,092, and it would charge us a rate of 2.94%, and would be one payment next year of $507,588.90. 2 year option would be at 2.88%, and it would be 2 equal payments of $257,247.19. And the 3 year option would be at 2.78% with 3 payments of $173,586.16. What I'm asking is what they've offered us is a bundle price, and essentially a discount if we have an agreement today on how we want to move forward. And we are up against a time crunch in that. There are certain things that have to be put in place before the statewide system can be upgraded, and part of that is dependent on us as well. So they had included a February 26th deadline to receive a $350,000 discount if we tell them what our intention is. So that the request before you is that the board approve either one of the 3 or a 4th option, and allow me to convey that decision to Motorola so that we can capture the discount. And
I was going to say, that's today.
Obtain the documents, yes.
Well, Sheriff, you said there's $1 million left over from the 2006 sales tax?
That's my understanding, yes.
That's what we're talking about, right? You said 2008, but 8's when we started getting
8, I think, is when it went
That's
on,
when we started
right.
buying the stuff, but I think, so, my theory is sales tax paid for it, sales tax needs to maintain it, just like County Road 1 also. But
and is this just for the hub for Leavenworth County, or does this affect the cities too? Are the cities separate issue from this?
All the first responders in Leavenworth County use this system.
They use that system.
In addition, Leavenworth County offshoots like Public Works, Transfer Station, JDC, Emergency Management, Fire, EMS utilize the system as well. So it's not just a law enforcement issue; it's a public safety issue.
But there is no cost share with any of those other entities, though.
Currently, there is not.
Is there a staff recommendation?
That's where I was
Mark.
Well, the $1 million would. I checked with the clerk, and the $1 million would be there. We have one more payment coming in from Tonganoxie at the end of this year. The balloon payment would be due once we receive
$500,000 in there.
Close to that, yeah. So once that money comes in, then we would have the $1 million that we're talking about. But we're from a cash basis, we'd be okay as long, again, assuming that they're going to make that payment, which I have every indication that they would.
How did we handle that when it went from analog to digital? on the whole system, which included the cities then? How did we handle the payment? Was it just the 911 funds?
No, this was all tax, wasn't it?
Commissioner Culbertson, it was initially financed through the state since the project was integrated into the overall upgrade of the state communications system. So it was financed via state loan program.
Just from the county, though? The cities didn't get separate loans?
I think the sheriff's outlined to you the agencies that are affected.
Okay.
But this, Sheriff, remind me, we've talked about it, it's been a little while, but there are outside of Leavenworth County benefactors, right? So when we talk about the state of Kansas, for example, I think we've mentioned there are outside agencies outside of the county that also benefit, yet they're not subsidizing any of this cost. This cost is all being shouldered by Leavenworth.
There's not anybody outside of Leavenworth County that benefits directly where we're carrying the load. They benefit in that they have access to the system.
Right.
They get, just like we benefit from
having access
to the state system,
sure,
or Barton County or whatever else. So we're all plugged into the same tree.
They just got a bigger budget, just trying to figure out how to get some.
We're actually on towers outside of the county.
And there's the benefit for, like you were saying, if you're transporting individuals from one jurisdiction to Leavenworth or out of Leavenworth someplace, I mean, that communication is seamless with this system in place where it can be dropped.
So going back to the options here, the difference of, again, $1 million payments made in 2021, the difference is what we're discussing, and that would be a general fund.
I think then what would happen is in the sheriff's budget annually, if he chose 1, 2, or 3 years, then annually he would include that in his budget request. We've also talked about the need to start setting aside funding for the next change in a depreciation format or an equipment reserve format. So,
well, I mean, just looking at the options, especially from a cash flow perspective and knowing the department, I would think option 3 makes the most sense. I mean, it's a difference of $15,000 or so over the course of 3 years to shoulder that burden longer.
What was our last bond rates that we went out for?
Well, the last time we did the temporary notes, it was less than 1%.
It was less than 1%.
But the amount we're talking here probably doesn't raise to the level of issuing temporary notes because of other costs. The lease.
We're doing the whole thing, maybe.
But 2.78% is that's not bad.
Well, they just say it's a payout of 507, 515, 522. I mean,
radios. I mean, is this going to be? Well, and this will last for 5 years, or this will last for 10 years, or you'll be back in 2 years asking for?
That's one of the things that we actually ask, because it is a large sum of money and it's a large project. They anticipate that the upgrades that are done at this time will last at least 10 years, and it's what we're at now on the current system. It's about 10 years since they've had to
which is not unusual.
do any other upgrades. So
10 or 12 years.
Good.
I'm just saying that's not.
They'll probably come up with some new system, though.
Yeah. Maybe they'll do away with towers someday, and we won't have to mess with the towers. But do you have a preference, sure?
To me, I think the third option probably makes the most sense.
Well, that's kind of the way that's the way you feel.
Okay. It sucks less.
There you go. I wasn't going to say it. I wasn't going to steal your thunder, but so I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve the sheriff's request to approve the financing for the upgrade to the current radio system. And then amount. Do we need to do that? To approve the 3-year option, the amount of $498,092 at 2.78% interest, equaling 3 payments of $173,586.16.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on the upgrades?
If we don't do this now, it's going to cost an additional $350,000.
If we don't do it now,
You get
we
a
lose
discount.
the discount. The difference between last year and this year is some $400,000 because the change of technology in that amount of time. So it's just going to go up.
Okay.
And the county, over the last, say, 8 years, what would you estimate we've spent on radios?
We have annual maintenance, I think total annual maintenance in the realm of about $80,000 per year.
And we upgraded.
And that's the system. That's not.
That's just
not the
radio,
last
so-
upgrade.
No, that's maintenance.
Yeah.
No, that's just to ensure that when you push the button that everything's working like it's supposed to.
So we spend a lot of money.
Maintenance and
We do.
repairs, I guess, would be. Yeah. Any further discussion in voting?
Aye.
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 Thank you.
Thank you, Sheriff.
Thanks, Sheriff.
you.
All right.
And congratulations
Yeah,
again to you
yet
and your
again.
team.
that's-
So.
On the award, that's awesome.
They work hard. Thank you.
I sent him pictures to Mark. I think
John?
somebody else took some pictures too.
Okay. All right. We are ready for Solid Waste Committee. Who will be handling Solid Waste Committee?
Good morning.
Good morning, Kim.
Good morning.
Stephanie.
We're coming before you this morning as representatives from the Leavenworth County Solid Waste Management Committee, bringing 2 items before the board today for consideration. The first one being to be in compliance with KDHE, the Board of County Commissioners annually has to approve the current plan. And this year, the crux of the plan stayed the same. There is one change, and it does require board approval. That came to membership. You should see the new membership roster that was attached. Randy Brilliantine from Bumpy Roads Disposal was a current member on the board, and back in October of 2019, he sold his business to Bobby Hancock from Brothers Disposal. The committee invited Bobby Hancock to our January meeting, and we asked him about his interest in taking over Randy's spot, and he said he would do it. Our committee voted or motioned and approved in favor 7-0 to accept him.
Okay.
And so we're asking you today to, you've reviewed our minutes and seen the changes to the membership roster. If we can get the board approval, we do need to submit to KDHE by March 12th, the approval.
Okay.
And it just needs to be reflected in board minutes.
And that's just for the new member or
Yep,
for the
that's
other?
the only change to the current plan.
Okay.
How is that typically? Is that typically handled? You guys bring nominations from within, and then it's brought before the commissioners. Is that how it's been handled in the past?
For membership?
Yeah.
Yes, there is a set of standards we follow, guidelines about who the membership is made up of, but it does take board approval.
Okay. Because we've had a lot of different boards that we've been filling, and we've opened it up to.
We last
public,
year pared down. We had one of the most robust solid waste committee in the state of Kansas, and upon advisement with the administrator, we went back and looked at the membership requirements, and we did pare down to where we have the basic requirements, which kind of makes it easier to get those people to the table, so we always have a quorum at meetings.
Any other questions of Kim? Okay. So you just need a motion to approve Mr. Hancock as a
As the replacement
committee
for
member.
Mr. Brilliantine.
To replace.
So moved.
Second. All right. Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on the appointment of Mr. Hancock to the Solid Waste Committee? Voting?
Aye.
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 All right. Thank you. The second issue we would like to discuss is the countywide cleanup. At our January meeting, the committee discussed the outcome and statistics of our current efforts, and have a few statistics for you. These statistics are as of January 30th, 2020. 546 residents have used the service. 239.2 tons of waste
has been just dropped off. 72% of the total residents utilizing the service did so in the months of April, May, and June. Then it drops off drastically to very random here and there. The committee believes this is a very valuable service to the residents of Leavenworth County, but we feel maybe a change in the time frame might be more appropriate. We'd like to see it go to the spring cleanup time frame of April, May, and June. Or if you'd still like to keep that year long, the other consideration was we'd like to see it move to the calendar year versus the April 1st to March 31st. It's very confusing to the customers, and it's a little harder for statistical reporting purposes also. We've had a few customers come in. They utilized it last year. Then they came in after January 1st this year and said, I want to do it again, but they weren't eligible.
Okay.
So those are the two options we would like to bring before you today.
I personally would like to see it stay year-round and January to or December 31st, January 1st, whatever. Because when I was a road and bridge superintendent, we picked up garbage all over the county year-round. And it looked like somebody cleaned up their garage or whatever and then just dumped it out. And road and bridge folks had to go pick it up. And so...
Have you had a reduction in that since we implemented year-round?
I don't know. I retired from there. And then came in here and made this happen.
No, I'm just saying that would be a question. I mean, that would be something
I
I'm
think it
interested in
has
knowing.
slowed down,
because-
especially with the tires.
Yeah,
We
what
used
kind
to
of
get a lot of
impact does that
tires. That'd be a Lauren question, and she probably can't
Kim, while
answer
most
that
of it
today.
occurs-
Wouldn't be able to answer that as well as Vince would, but I
Right.
can say I have not heard.
We used to keep a map. We used to keep a map of cleanups we'd done.
So while most of the activity occurs over that 90-day period, I would also think if you tried to tie it to just a 90-day period, we're obviously going to get some feedback, right? The other 30% of people that came outside that window. But I'm also thinking even just from a cost perspective, the fact that we spread it over a calendar year, we're not collecting any fees. We still have all the expenses, right, associated with, our discardment of. So, I would think a January to December 31st would make a lot of sense unless operationally the team out there thinks that's a problem.
Well, I think when we implemented it, I don't know that there was the intent that it was your 12-month period is the day that you come in and then the 12-month calendar starts. I think the board intended that it would be a calendar year, but it wasn't clear when we did it. So I think that would help. Last year was the first year, so I think that also makes a difference because when did the cleanup used to be? Was it in April of each year?
Usually it's April, coincides
so that's
with
why
spring cleanup time frame.
That's why a lot of it came this last year in April was because that's when people were used to coming. Now that it's been made more aware.
It's also because a lot of people don't go outside till then.
Yeah, so if you look at it, if 72% of the people came in April, May, and June, that means only 153 people came in the other months. So I can't see that would be an undue burden on staff to continue to allow it, as long as we put that limitation that it's a calendar year. So if we started over on January 1, and I think that would make it a little easier to track so that they can just reset the database and start again. So,
yeah.
Well, I think with that change, I don't see any reason why we couldn't continue to do it year round.
I agree.
That's my opinion.
What about you, Jay?
Got any thoughts, Commissioner Colson?
Yeah, I want to keep the free dump day, but whatever you think is easier, make it from January 1, or I was assuming that when you made the list of the people that came out and dumped, you put a date by when they dumped, and then they had
They
one
have
year.
That's what they did.
Electronic database, and now, for example, there are several people who own multiple properties. So typically, you bring in your ID, you say, I live at. They mark you off the list, showing that you've used your free dump. But if you own multiple properties, they ask you to come in. They ask you to bring proof of, whether it's they bring a CV in or a copy of a deed or a utility bill for that address with your name on it as the owner. You do have to prove. There's a few more hoops to jump through the more properties you try to utilize.
So what would make it easier for you guys if you used the January 1?
Well, I wish Tammy were here today. Tammy had a prior commitment.
I did meet with Tammy and discuss this, and the January 1, and that's actually in the action requested.
Right.
If
That's what they
it's
want
either
to
do the January 1, that would be easier than what they're doing right now,
Okay.
if not the April through March.
Well, I think we need to do what we can for the citizens, especially the citizens in the southwest part of the county. It's kind of a good trip up here to get up here. Hate for them to come up here and say, "Oh, nope, that's done."
I don't have a problem with having it once a year, starting in January.
Yeah, you get one.
And one free.
Right. So is that your motion?
Second.
Yep.
And do people? So I don't know that I ever knew that, but we've actually tracked it per parcel rather than by person. And so when you talk about what they might need to bring, I would think that, I mean, we've got internet out there. Can we not pull up GIS and pull the parcel owner's information there versus and making it less burdensome maybe for the resident that brings?
I believe that's where they got their ownership information from.
Oh, okay. I thought we were saying we were requiring them to bring in like mail or something.
Because the appraiser's records are tied to the GIS records.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So already doing it. Good.
So we had a motion and a second?
Yeah.
And no more discussion?
No.
All right. Voting?
Aye.
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 Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kim.
See you next year.
Thanks, Kim.
Well, I hope we see you before that.
Well, no, if we see her, it's usually a disaster.
Well, okay. I see her in the hallway sometimes.
Yeah, be careful how you word that.
Yeah.
Every time we see her, it's a disaster.
No, I see her downstairs sometimes.
Now we're ready for Lauren.
Hello, Commissioners.
Hi, Lauren.
I am coming to speak with you today about two separate issues. One we have spoken a little bit about, McIntyre Road project. We are nearing completion. We expect seeding to be completed this spring. However, before we get into that, I have brought to you a request for additional funds for the construction inspection services contract that we hold with Finish. They have, similarly to County Route 1, as the construction services continued, they continued to do their inspection services. They did end up going past their contract, and so they are requesting reimbursement for the funds that they have already performed, as well as anticipated services through the end of this project, through the seeding of this spring.
So was this more related to the time frame that's obviously been elongated relative to this project that was caused by several outside entities, or was this misbid on their part relative to the scope?
I believe it was due to the delay in project. We do have a representative from Venice here with me. If you have any questions directly for them, they'd be happy to answer.
Yeah, that'd be great.
I think this is probably the project was let before utilities were out of the way.
Mm-hmm.
And that's,
They don't want to hear from me.
Hi, I'm Wade Heim with Finish. I'm our construction services group manager. And the timeline on this, I think we entered into an agreement at the end of 2017. Notice to proceed was issued in December of 17 with a completion date 12 months from then. At that time, the Rural Water District had some lines that were in the way, and so they couldn't start construction. They did allow the contractor to start on the box culverts. Originally, they were going to start on the west end of the project and move east. They allowed them to start on the box culverts because there wasn't any water line conflicts there. So they started there and did some work. After that, they had to stop. They basically got as far as they could get until the water lines were moved. So the delay of starting kind of in full force, coupled with, that basically pushed their end date back. And then I don't know if you remember, but the fall of 18 and spring of winter, and then spring of 19 was one of the wettest we've had in a long time. It was tough on the construction, so they were really slowed by that. The cold temperatures limited their asphalt capabilities, so that got pushed back. And I think you guys have approved. I think right there's an asphalt cost increase because of the delay. The contractor had an increase because of remobilization, and so this is all tied to that.
I have a question. For Were the number of days the contractor was working increased?
I don't believe that there was an official change order that was issued to increase the number of days. They did work longer than the 12-month calendar period that they originally were scheduled to work. I think we had about 600 hours over what our original estimate was, and frankly, we tried our best to limit how many hours we went over. We're doing an inspection for the city of Lansing on that DeSoto Road project, and so we tried to share inspectors there just to reduce costs as best we could. So, but I don't believe an official change order was ever.
So I understand the delay in the project means it started at a different date, and maybe it took them longer to finish, but I just wondered if there was actually an increase in the amount of days they were actually working, because to me that would be the only way that the hours should have changed.
Because if the job was shut down, it was shut down.
And I would also, I believe that there was an issue twice that transpired with a lack of inspection services that impacted the erosion control measures that were not implemented during that time period. And I believe that Mr. Lothry met with your organization regarding that.
Yeah, I know I met with
We met. I think you met with Mike once.
Yeah.
I believe you probably met with Sarah once, maybe even more, and at some point there as well.
Yeah, there was.
So were we not billed for those services, and they were not completed?
I guess I would have to go back and look at the SWIP reports that
I would like for you to do that.
Okay, I can do that. I personally met out there with a couple different times to discuss the erosion control. I know one was with Mike. I think one was maybe after the Olson guys were involved.
Possibly, I know they.
Yeah.
I had been informed that there had been previous times, and so they met to discuss it, I believe, on request of.
But so anyway, there's a couple of questions here. The one Mark has brought up of if it was, and I'm just going to use the 600 for conversational sake. If it was a 600-hour scope project over a 12-month period, and ultimately it turned into a 24-month period, but the scope was still 600 hours, I can see there being, cost or penalty because we didn't deliver relative to the time frame. And in all seriousness, I'd like to see us put together an agreement so that if a utility is in the way or creates the problem, I just send this change order to them.
Sure. Yeah, and I can pull a report that shows exactly how many days they worked on site or had people on site. I mean, there's some days where it's not a full day, and we don't just have someone sit out there if there's no contractor. But I don't know that off the top of my head, but I can put that together on how many days they actually worked, and I think we would find that they were out there longer than what they had anticipated.
Okay.
I don't think probably it would be appropriate to make a decision until we have that information.
Well, we could make a motion to deny this till we get more documentation on it.
Well, I don't know if it's. I mean, is it a table? Is it delay? I mean, we're asking for additional supporting material. I don't know what the appropriate procedure or process would be,
But you wouldn't have to take any action. You could just direct them to come back with more information, and we can put it back on an agenda when we're ready for that.
And just so we're clear, we want basically a report that would show how many days the contractor was on site.
How many extra days?
How many extra days they were on site? Okay.
Yeah, I think
because if the job was shut down, there shouldn't have been any inspection service.
And I would also like additional information on the SWIP and the inspection services that were involved with that.
Yeah,
and copies of those reports that showed that was completed at the time that it was supposed to have been done.
Okay.
I want the documentation, please.
So again, just the initial proposal and scope of work relative to obviously what was completed and what that gap between the two is, and I have no doubt that there's some amount of responsibility, but it's well beyond Leavenworth County.
Right. And it's not. And I'm not wanting when it was finally completed. I'm wanting when it was supposed to have been completed relative to when the work was done. Am I making sense?
Maybe clarify that a little bit. When the project was supposed to be completed versus when it was done?
Okay, when you complete work, when you have disturbed soil, correct, you are supposed to put certain controls into place that keep erosion from transpiring, correct?
Yep.
When that is not done, there's a violation, correct?
Yes.
Okay. When that is not done, and it is ostensibly should have been inspected by the individuals that we have contracted with to inspect, and it's not done, and a month passes and it's still not done, but it's brought to your attention that it hasn't been done, and then it is done, that's like, I'm just saying 30 days past when it should have been, correct?
Yeah, I mean, there are dates. I mean, basically, you're supposed to, anytime you get a half inch or more of rain,
right,
you have until the end of, I believe it's the following business day to do an inspection.
Right.
When you do the inspection and you put it on your report that there is some silt fence that is knocked down or whatever, that something that needs repaired, the contractor has 7 calendar days to fix it. There is a clause in there about reasonable effort. So, if the slope is too muddy to get equipment down there, they don't expect someone to go down there with a shovel and a bucket and,
But when they're doing the work, they're supposed to put it in when they have completed it, right? So if you have made a cut and you have disturbed the dirt, you at that point in time is the time in which you are supposed to implement erosion control, correct?
Yeah, I'd have to check, I guess, the permit that this one is under. On a KDOT job, yes, they have, I believe it's, if an area is inactive for 2 weeks, then they have basically 10 days from that time to initiate erosion control measures.
Right.
Now, on every project and every contractor has a different opinion of what inactive means. But, if there's no equipment on site.
The conversation a year ago took place with the county administrator regarding this issue, correct? I mean, am I right?
We had more than one conversation.
More than one, yes, because it transpired on more than one occasion.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I know there was erosion control issues out there, and like I said, we had multiple meetings. I honestly don't remember meeting with Mark on site, but maybe we...
Not on site, we met in my office once.
Okay, and with Spencer and with the Line Weaver folks?
Yeah.
Okay, I remember that. But yeah, I'd have to go back and look at our diaries and our inspection reports and that get you any dates.
Okay. Any other questions? Bring it back to us.
All right,
thank you.
Yep, thank you.
All right, we're ready for Warren and consideration of dust control form revision.
Yes, so when I came to you approximately this time last month and we approved the dust control program for 2020, since then I have received a significant amount of inquiries in very large volumes. Mr. Herring was speaking about a resident who is requesting 3,000 feet. We have another situation that he was also speaking to, which is, I believe, approximately 2,000 feet. So we have some very large installation projects that people have been inquiring about. We have not had many that have officially signed up, as they take some additional conversations, financing, exactly how long it is and things like that. But I would like to request before all of these start rolling in that we take under consideration that these are installed by the county crews. Our county crews are meant to be maintaining our roadways. And if we allow this program to be uncapped and all of these people do apply this year, potentially that affects our expected maintenance schedules. And so I would like to add a limit to this of no more than 4 miles or no more than 6 project locations to be determined by myself and the road and bridge superintendent. As I believe I stated in here, one roadway that connects to another roadway at a corner, they just round out that corner and they continue on, and it's not picking up and remobilizing somewhere else. And so that is a very significant difference in the amount of time that they're taking away from their schedule. So I've had conversations with Vince about what he feels his crews can comfortably be capable of, and 4 miles or 6 property location changes is really what he kind of said we were comfortable with.
Well, I'm not opposed. I realize that we've got to put in, self-awareness. We have to realize that we have limitations.
Right.
At the same time, we set expectations, and there's a number of things we've done with residents that I think one of those that got brought up goes back to summer of last year. So I'm curious as to, we set a deadline, say of February.
The end of March is
the end of March.
The deadline.
But that is our deadline of the end of March. We're committing to that construction season the way that it is written and worded now.
Yes.
Yes.
That construction season at that rate.
Okay. Well, just a couple of things. One, I want to be hesitant of what we say our capabilities are or aren't, while we're trying to undergo a much larger effort with Olson to figure out, again, as we are focused on maintaining 250 plus miles of roadway per year, what we can and cannot do internally, what we can or what we could or should maybe contract versus complete internally.
Right.
Those are all much bigger questions than trying to do this one.
Absolutely. And
while
this
it's
is
going down the road. Because how many have we had actually submit, completed, check all the boxes relative to?
So again, we have not had any. We have one that is undetermined that Mr. Herring was speaking to you about, that we will need to make a judgment on. You will need to make a judgment on. And then I have several others who have requested very large amounts of projects. Every year is a different program. This is specifically for the 2020 project. I think the dust control is something that needs to be reevaluated every year, both in the cost and the amount of maintenance that our county crews are capable of performing in that year. It is always possible that we do not have the staff for it. It is always possible that we have equipment that is down. So it's something that we need to be reevaluating every year. And this year, for this program, for the 2020, this is what Vince has stated that he feels comfortable committing to. I believe it was the 2018 installation year. They installed 4 miles of dust abatement, which was 127th and Gilman, 155th, another road that escapes me, I apologize. 171st. And he said that he really felt that was a pretty significant amount of time, but he felt that was something that his crews would be capable of doing as the time is available. Because we do not set a specific schedule on this is something that our crews are capable of getting out and doing either early in the spring or at the very end of the spring or the end of summer when we still have some warm months. So we're not held to a specific time frame per this program. We're held to a warm time frame.
I was going to say, September, you got to get 2 shots of oil on
30 days
apart.
Again, I can see policy where you're going to impact future, applications or future approvals versus those that are already underway. My challenge is, no offense to Vince, my question is, we've only got less than 70% of the maintenance we planned last year completed. So I don't feel confident we've got our arms around everything that we've already got to do, more or less other projects.
And those are things that we are working on in the CIP.
That's why we need to limit.
Right.
But I want to do so like data, not just assumptions and feelings.
Well, if we went out to contractors with this, we'd have to adjust our price quite significantly.
They wouldn't get it done for $19.50.
No, it would be significant.
But it's possible. I'm just asking this as a question. Is it possible that if we created another tier, that if people really wanted this, that they could go out to a contractor and we could charge a different rate?
And that is something that I am looking to as well. We obviously have our dust abatement program, which is something similar but not the same. So it is something that Mark and I have discussed about and am considering. As you said, maintenance is something else that we're working on. These are all parts of ongoing program maintenance schedules.
Because there might be residents that would be willing to pay $25 or,
Well, but again, this all goes back to when an application is created and ultimately completed and submitted and checks are written and everything else, I don't think there should be a lot of speculation at that point. So at this point in time, if we're saying
4 miles,
there's still a number of things that we don't know, I'd rather find those out first, then adjust our policy. Because just saying 4 miles now, we could be in the same predicament as last year. But we committed to stuff and we didn't deliver, which is what I'm trying to get us to stop doing.
Well, but you without a limit, we could have 10 miles of people come in and fill out applications, and we definitely can't do 10.
Well, no, but there's a couple of things that goes back to the policy, which is why I want to have more discussion on it. That policy should be, again, there's budget implications, there's valuation implications, there's capital implications, there's weather implications, there's tornado implications. Like, these are all things that we need to be able to have and say, okay, look, we can commit to X amount, which I'm saying we still don't know. And then there's a cost to it. And if somebody submits and checks all the boxes and pays that payment, well then, again, maybe it couldn't be completed in that calendar year. Then what are we going to do the following year? Say, well, the cost are enough X.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, these are all things that we need to not decide in flux. Like, needs to have some serious.
We don't need to be approving more than what we can accommodate in that calendar year because costs do go up.
Right. We need
to make judgments as to what we can accomplish and then accept no more applications and open them up again once.
And if we made a decision on limiting it to the 4 miles and then we came back with a different policy that you can have this tier system where you could get an outside contractor later as a policy, then that could expand to more miles that we could do.
Well, the scope's changed on these dust abatements since I was there.
Right.
Because our guys are getting these roads ready in all these other groups.
Right.
You got to add that into the mix of their prep. So I understand where yourself and Vince are concerned about this.
I am working towards pulling together a new policy for this specifically that does take into consideration these people that are asking to install 3,000 lineal feet, 2,000 lineal feet, substantial numbers. The initial program set a minimum of 300 feet, and last year we had, I believe, 5 applicants totaling about 3,000 feet. This year we have a substantial more interest, and so I immediately am speaking to you about this 2020 year to make sure that we do not get ahead of ourselves, that we are able to complete what we allow. And in the behind the scenes, I am working towards another program that would take into consideration some of these larger projects and some of the things that maybe we need to be planning for the future, and either limiting or acknowledging that there's going to be a substantial risk.
Yeah, and I agree. I love a minimum, and I think there should be a maximum, and we should have language in there that if force majeure impacts, whether it's weather-related or catastrophes or anything else, that means it gets delayed. And if it gets delayed, again, having language, so there's none of this he said, she said that said, okay, well, thought it was 1950, but now it's going to be 2150 or whatever that ends up being, and there's no confusion. They know what the difference is because, again, we couldn't get to it. And so I'm all for a maximum. I just want
but we also need to avoid what's happening, obviously, here is people scrambling to get in under the new rules or the new costs associated, and so we can only do so much in this calendar year to address those. So I think that we should give them the ability to, okay, then it's first come, first serve. Once we have hit X number of miles, we're not accepting any more applications until the 2021 year, and at that point in time, yes, the cost will have increased.
And maybe in 2021, maybe we could have a list of on-call contractors.
Right. And I will be working.
That's where I think we need to be
in session with you to go over some future policy that I see. Yes, I agree.
And we're making all these assumptions we haven't even thought about. You're talking about 5,000 miles or 5,000 feet that we know about. How many utilities we think are laying across them?
Right. So I'm just saying. But
and
I think if we can't honor that, then at least we have limited the amount of what we have said we can't get done in time. If we put a cap on this. Which is
these are crews, so the utilities aren't going to, because it's going to be a base chip and seal. It'll be asphalt.
They're not. They don't do. So it's not an engineer.
It's just cleaning the ditches and shaping the road and replacing some culverts. But that all takes time, also.
Right. I'm fully supportive of this.
And I thought there's been some conversations about that, and simply the reason we made those changes was because of how poor the last number of chip and seal applications held up.
And those were the contractor installed chip and seal applications, which is why we're now doing asphalt on the dust abatement program. And this is the dust control, which
we're saying our chip and seal last, our contractor's chip and seal doesn't.
We seem to have significant amount of luck with our chip and seal.
And that's fantastic. It's largely because there's not a lot of chip and seal crews out there.
Right.
Well,
and
also
we're a
because we're not
nonprofit organization,
right.
We're not trying to cut any corners.
Right. When we see there needs to be extra rock, we bring in extra rock.
Sure.
So.
Yeah.
No, and I think our crews do a great job. Not being critical, I'm just trying to figure out what we can or can't commit to, what the policy should be written relative to outside factors. Like those are all things that we're trying to get with your direction and Vince's and working with Olson. We're building the credibility within how we forecast and estimate those substantially.
And I would like to have a work session to discuss
right.
future policy about that. And I'm actively what I'd like to be headed down to work on. This is that policy.
That, I'd like to see us come up with a list of on-call contractors.
For the time being is this document. To say
I'm all for doing what you're calling for, but I do think we want to expedite the contractor option and get that moving quickly because obviously there's a demand.
There is, but that's not going to happen this year.
And the demand is
everybody's already scheduled for this year. This would have to be something we'd have to come up with, get it done in the fall, or actually sooner than that.
Well, for the fall. I mean, it's quickly.
For contractors to be able to schedule any
right, but I
kind of
just
work.
think that's why I said I just think, but for the time being, what Lauren is asking for, I think is reasonable.
I do too.
For us to do.
So is that a motion?
Okay, motion.
So just to be clear again, last year in total we had received the 3,000 feet. So we were estimating 2020 is going to look like 3,000 feet, even though we increased the cost substantially. And what we found is
that was what I thought. Yes.
Right, and what we found is we've got more interest. So what you've mentioned is 5,000 square feet, or 5,000 linear feet. Sorry, and it seems like we're just all of a sudden creating a threshold of, well, the second person that came in, you're out.
4 miles is.
Yeah, but that's
you're talking 4 miles, not 5,000.
4 miles and 5,000 feet.
I thought we had 3,000 feet and 2,000 feet, and we're wanting to set threshold at 4,000 feet.
I have had people inquire about 8,000 feet.
But we have lots of people inquire and ask lots of questions.
But we want to make sure
like serious applications that have been submitted.
That.
We have the one that's unresolved, and we have the other one that Mr. Herring was speaking about that he would like to have a conversation with you. That's 5,000 feet, and then I have another gentleman that is very well aware it is an old special use permit that had been requested previously to chip and seal, so I assume that his inquiry is a very serious one. So that potentially puts me at 8,000 feet. And they are all 3 in different locations, which is where these 6 location limitations come from, whichever does come first. Because, again, we are pulling our crews off maintenance schedules to be able to perform this. And what used to be a very small program now is booming. And I don't know if that is because people have sunk a significant amount of money into chemical, and they have finally decided that they would like to see chip and seal. If people are seeing the dust abatement come around and are thinking that that's pretty nice, and that would be wonderful if they had it, whatever the reason
well,
is.
That's why, and there's a lot more information I think that's needed, because some of these are relative to new developments, right? I mean,
well, I think without setting a
limit
limit today, you just have to put the program on hold.
Right.
For the additional information, because we can't just let it go on and get to a point where we can't.
Well, we can't accommodate or do it. Right.
So either we need to have
committing to something and not delivering.
Either we need to have the limit.
That's new.
Or we need to just say this program's on hold. We don't have any applications yet.
Not yet.
We won't accept any or we won't accept any this year. But it needs to be one way or the other. Otherwise, we can get into.
I think we need to. We need to accept the application sooner than later. So. Vince and them guys can
this is the the deadline's March for a reason. We've actually extended a little this year because that's the only way we can get it scheduled and set up.
This is what Lauren has asked us for, and she's giving us a professional opinion that she has spent the time and effort to research.
And that's not lost on me. My challenge is we're talking about pulling people off of maintenance, and I go, at the same time, we didn't complete what we planned last year, so now it's not 250 miles this year, it's 280 miles.
So you want to close it down?
Well, I'm just saying I haven't seen any program yet that we can...
Do you want to shut down applications?
There's a big difference between what we received and committed to versus what people are asking us.
There's never been a year that all the maintenance got completed.
Unfortunately, Vince isn't here to speak to his crews, but Commissioner Smith, maybe you can. The amount of time that it takes to do some of this and the crews that are pulled off, Yes, they're doing maintenance.
No,
and yes,
I worked there when commissioners didn't care about deadlines. If there was a buddy of theirs that came in and wanted their road chip sealed, that's what happened. Just do it. Didn't care how you got it done, just do it. So, no, I'm for limiting the amount that we take because that's all we can do.
Right. That's what
And then, like I said, the other roads suffer when we have to pull these guys off. And like I said, I think next year we can fix it on a on-call, contractor on-call basis. But we need to get that worked out in the fall.
So again, but other than inquiries, what have we received in the way of applications, and what have we actually been paid for?
we have one that is unresolved that Mr. Herring was speaking about. And that is all. And that is why I'm trying to get into you as early as possible. So anybody that has an inquiry, I can provide. This is a first come, first served basis. If you are serious about this inquiry, you need to submit this immediately.
So we'll have to change the
I would
form,
like to provide,
or just have to change it on the website.
Right. I would like to provide the information up front so people don't wait until March 31st when they've got the old form.
I got you.
And they don't.
So we've got one application. There's another one or two of interest. So we're talking about 3 projects. They're just larger ones. Or maybe
I actually have 2 others that have also called in. So
They're
5.
called in, okay.
And how would you deal with, say, like a special use permit that's going to require them to do this?
A special use permit that would require them to do this would be a scenario in which they would be required to apply in the year applicable, in my personal opinion. There is a deadline set for all residents. That deadline should be held as to any and all. And then if we're looking into the dust abatement program instead of the dust control program, which is county installed chip and seal, I think there's some additional information that goes into that. But installation of chip and seal just simply cannot be done at any time throughout the year. We should not be pulling our county crews off at any time just simply because we have suggested that they need to pave their road. There were times in which we required people to upgrade the road to county standard at entirely their own cost, to hire an engineer, to hire the construction crews, and then we would take it over once done. So there are many ways that this could be done, but the dust control, the county installed chip and seal, I believe should be held to the deadline as posted, and then open available at a first come, first serve the following year, if this is a program we wish to follow through with next year.
I agree.
And you'll also see some activity when people start getting income tax refunds.
Yeah, well, okay.
Oh, we could always tell that. I mean, I remember I talked to a lot of people over the years that was doing this or the chemical, and I agree. If you're going to do chemical year after year, you might as well do the hard surface.
I think the 5-year financing has also probably sparked a lot of people's interest. Yep. This is only the second year that that's available. And so now that people have heard about it enough, possibly that's what they're looking to do.
Okay. Any other questions of Lauren? Then I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve the 2020 dust abatement control request form, revision 1.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Voting?
Aye.
Nay.
Aye.
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 Have a wonderful day.
Okay.
Thank you, Lauren. And again, I'm all for having a threshold. There's so many things that I still don't know. I'm just frustrated.
So as I said, I would like to have a work session with you shortly to discuss future policy on this matter.
Thank you.
All right. We are ready for planning and zoning. Sorry to keep everybody waiting so long.
One thing before we get started on this next one, I did have a question for the county councilor on the need or the requirement of a public hearing on a temporary special use permit.
Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission, I apologize for coming at such a late hour on this topic. However, the statutory requirement for the conduct of a public hearing is for matters involving a rezoning. Now, a special use permit is considered a rezoning because it allows a use that is not otherwise allowed in that zoning category. I do not believe that the public hearing requirement extends to a temporary special use permit because it's not a rezoning. It's merely allowing an event. And consequently, it's been noticed up for a public hearing and you may wish to conduct it at this time, but I do not believe in future instances that temporary special use permit applications require a public hearing.
Okay.
Yeah, and is there any implication if it's something that's gone on for many years?
No. I think, if anything, Commissioner, what it really was an additional extension to any interested members of the public.
Okay.
And quite frankly, as a matter of practicality, you're going to allow it anyway. It's just a question of whether you need to formally open and close a public hearing.
Okay, thank you, David. Crystal?
Good morning,
Are you
Mr.
there?
Chairman and Commissioners. This is a request for a temporary special use permit for the Brew to Brew Run. Brew to Brew Run has taken place in Leavenworth County for a very long time. The applicant's requesting this to be held on Sunday, March 29th. I believe the report says the 28th, but it should say the 29th. As you may recall, recently we amended our zoning and subdivision regulations to allow temporary special use permits such as this to be approved administratively, so long as all departments that were affected were able to sign off on it and say that everything was fine. Unfortunately, in the case of the Brew to Brew race, the Sheriff's Department had considerable concerns regarding this. Sheriff Dedeke is obviously here and will be able to elaborate on some of that if you have any questions. But due to the Sheriff's concerns, staff is recommending denial of this request. Miss Nancy English is here, I believe, to represent the Kansas City Track Club with any questions that you may have.
Okay, then we'll open up the public hearing. We'll go from regular session to a public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak in favor of the Brew to Brew Run?
I'm Nancy English. I'm the president of the Kansas City Running Club, and I brought some people to help me answer questions if there were some that I couldn't answer. This is John Anderson. He has been involved with the Brew to Brew for the 25 years that it's been in existence. And I also brought Ron Fathlam from the Shriners. He's with the Motor Corps, and most of the guys on the Motor Corps are retired policemen or off-duty when they help us, and there's about 40 of them that help us on race day to control the crowds.
Excuse me, are you guys Leavenworth County residents?
We are not.
Okay, thank you.
We're from Kansas City. However, the Kansas City Running Club extends to the entire region. So one of our board members is from Leavenworth and part of the Leavenworth Running Club.
And who is that?
It's Janet Dye.
Janet Dye.
And we also have runners from all over Kansas. So I think the perception is a bunch of people from Kansas City are coming into your county and using your property, when in fact most of the runners are from Kansas. Fort Leavenworth, the Leavenworth Runner Club, is very active with this race. Wichita, Topeka, Lawrence, Manhattan, Hayes has a running club, Colby. So they're from all over. I've been the race director for 4 years, and I've tried to resolve a few issues that we've had. I think I've got another resolution. I wanted to give you some background of the Brew to Brew. Over the 25 years, we've been able to donate up to $80,000 to Cystic Fibrosis Foundation. We are the main source of income for them. We're also the main source of income for the Shrine Motor Corps. We're the main source of income for a couple of bike clubs that help us. And we're also the main source of income for the running club, which extends services to the entire region,
Nancy,
not just Kansas City.
Sorry, is that annually or since inception?
Up to $80,000 annually.
Okay, I was just making sure that wasn't like since the beginning. I'm like,
no.
Okay.
No. So for 25 years, we've had a major impact on all of those charities. I'm kind of in a bad situation right now. After last year's race, I thought I had the issues resolved. So Officer Thorne and I talked several times on race day and the day before about things. And I addressed those problems after the race. I was able to identify the teams that were a problem last year, and I called them, emailed them, and asked them not to attend this year. And I've done that every year when I've had problems. I had also called Karen Kane at Linwood City. She's a Linwood City clerk, and she indicated that we were welcome to come back to Linwood this year if we had some additional help managing the crowd. So, and that means people parking illegally, they're drunk and disorderly. But I think out of the 2,500 runners that we have going through your community, we probably have one team or two teams or just a few runners that are causing the problems all along the way.
When did you speak to Ms. Kane?
I talked to her right after the race.
Okay, well, I have an email from her yesterday saying that Mayor Christensen of Linwood would not like the Brew to Brew runners to come through the city of Linwood.
Right, and I talked to him yesterday about the issues.
And this is what they gave me to bring to the board today.
Well, Karen, I talked to Karen when the race was over, and she said the mayor said you have to have additional protection. So I opened up registration. So right now, I've generated $20,000 for cystic fibrosis, plus a whole bunch of other cash.
What you do is wonderful. I think everybody thinks that's wonderful, and we all support that. But what happened last year with the stopping of the Union Pacific train and the events that happened,
there was
absolutely no. And the city of Linwood, the mayor says no.
Right.
And that's the position. That's the position I'm going to take as a county commissioner from that area.
How does
a train get stopped?
I don't know, but people that are not obeying the law.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen that from the railroad, and I thought.
So I tried all sorts of things to control this, and I think I have a solution. And that is, the problem is not the runners running down the road. The problem is the team members in the cars who are sitting around waiting for their turn to run. So if I can get those away from residences and into remote areas, then there should be no problems with illegal parking and all of the other things that we've experienced. So my solution is to shut down the aid station at 158 and Golden Road. There's a lot of congestion there. I don't know that people are necessarily misbehaving there, but it's a small area and the cars get backed up. So I know that's a traffic congestion problem. So we eliminate that, have an aid station at Golden Road and 189th Street, and that is the road that goes down to Stranger Creek. So there's nothing there. There's no residences.
There's one residence on that road, a couple residents on that road.
You know, I don't know the people that caused an issue, where they were from, whether they were from, this area or another state or wherever they were. The reality is you can try your best, and I've been involved in many charities, and you also can't fix stupid.
No, you can't fix stupid, but...
So that's a problem, too. And while I'm very passionate about what you guys do and think you do an amazing job, our job is to worry about safety, so we've got to figure out a way to get the Sheriff's Department in support of anything that would be occurring in Leavenworth County.
When did the route change?
Solution number 2 is to bypass Linwood.
Right.
So I can keep them on Highway 32, and they can go down 260th Road, and it goes completely around the city. So that way there would be no cars and no runners in Linwood at all. So I think our main problems have been in Linwood and at Golden 158, and then at the railroad track where we had a problem. Ron, do you want to talk about that?
Not a problem in that area.
There used to be a...
So Ron has patrol at that intersection, or at that railroad track, at all the railroad tracks that we go across.
Hi, my name is Ron Fatlop. I'm with the Ararat Shrine Motor Corps Drill Team. We provide the escorting of the runners, the safety of the runners. I also am a lieutenant colonel in the Ararat Shrine Provost. We provide the safety, the traffic control, first aid, and I'm also a CPR instructor. In the years past, we haven't had any incidences. Unfortunately, last year, we had some problems. I have an end station at Loring and Loring and Linwood, which are the two problems that we have. And duct tape does not fix stupid. Okay? These runners, there's 3,000 runners. It's not the runners, it's the people in the cars that cause the problem. Linwood has been open armed to us up to a couple years ago. They like the runners coming through. And one day they generate a revenue of several $100s in taxes in just one day that goes for the county and city taxes. So my thing is, I understand your view on the traffic and the safety of the community, but all I could say is that we provide, the Shriners and the Provost and the drill team provide safety to the best of our ability to keep things safe. We haven't had any major incidences. In the past, I've been with this for 11 years, and in the times that I've been here, we haven't had any problems in safety, injuries, or violations. As time goes on, things get a little more out of hand. This year, it's a month sooner, which hopefully will, the weather will kind of help us out a little bit. But last year, the problem we had was there's a bar in Linwood that has been closed, and that's where the runners go. The runners were not there. The bar was closed last year, so they drank from themselves. Granted, the law says you can't have open containers. You know, I've got a letter here from the sheriff that wrote a letter stating that he understands the situation basically, but we are law enforcement of past. I mean, we have retired law enforcement. We have people that's over in Kansas City, Missouri. We've got deputy sheriffs, police officers, but our jurisdiction does not run into Kansas. And I understand his point of view that this is his county. So all we could provide is traffic control and safety. And all that we ask and all that Nancy asks, the club, is for a little support from the sheriff's office. She's willing to pay for a couple off-duty sheriffs. If a couple sheriffs were at Linwood and Loring, then if something's been committed, if they can be arrested, it's not going to take long for the word to get out, hey, they're serious. They arrest the runners. They arrest people that is either drinking and driving or drinking and getting ready to drive. It's not going to take long for that to get out there. And we get a handle back on the safety part of this. But
sounds like it's a little too late. If we got to wait till we get the word out, it's already happened.
So, Ron, just real quick, I mean, I'm going to guess there have been other incidents over 25 years. They're probably happening in places that maybe get a little bit more population or a little bit more traffic or might see that more often than maybe Linwood is. At the end of the day, if Linwood doesn't want it, that's Linwood's decision to make, not the county's to intervene. So if there's another way that the county can help or participate and our sheriff's department thinks that we can do so safely by bypassing Linwood, I would personally be supportive of the efforts. I mean, I think what you do, there's always some bad apples. At the end of the day, there's always some bad apples.
Let me ask you this. Is K32 that runs out on the outside of Linwood, that is not part of Linwood, right? The highway?
It runs on the south side of Linwood.
Well, if the runners stayed on K32.
That's Wyandotte.
No.
Well, you're running through it. It's passing through Linwood.
Yeah, but you're not going into the town of
You're not going, well, you're
talking about
technically in the
runs along
city.
the railroad tracks.
But they can.
Yeah, they can.
Okay,
What does brew to mean? Are we going from drinking? Explain that to me, the name.
Now, we're starting in Kansas City.
Okay.
And running 44 miles.
Okay.
Most of the runners are relay, so there's teams of 10 people, up to 10 people. It could be 2 people, 5 people, mostly 10 people. And they take turns running different legs. And that's why we have the support stations, is that's where they're supposed to stop and switch runners. So we end at Lawrence Beer Company, and that is where they're supposed to drink.
They're not supposed to be drinking on the route.
They are not supposed to be drinking on the route.
But that's happened in
They're
the
not
past.
supposed to be, no. And
It has
last year the weather was beautiful. So,
Well, just real quick though, Mike, so I'm following. Like, these are people that are running.
Right.
Okay.
I don't
they're
think
not
they're
operating.
drinking.
They're not operating motorcycles. They're not operating.
well, they could
If I may.
be done running.
Those aren't the people in the race.
They start
It's a
running
relay.
in Kansas City, and they'll run 4 miles, and they switch runners. So by the time they get to Wyandotte County,
I understand how it
there
works.
could be 3 or 4 runners in the car who are done running for the day.
Well, and
All I know is
usually at whatever station they're at, those people are very happy.
Linwood doesn't want it, and the
That's
sheriff
different.
doesn't want it, so I'm good with that. I'm not going to vote for this.
Well, the sheriff doesn't want it because there's issues, there's problems.
There's
If
problems.
I can work with the sheriff to eliminate those problem areas, if the cars and the runners aren't even in those areas, then
And you're not going to go
I think-
into Linwood?
No.
Why
Then
or when did the
I think
route
we can
move
take
off
care
of
of this.
10 highway? Why or when? The route used to be,
K-10.
Probably because
K10, right,
K10
you know,
turned into 435.
no, but within that corridor it used to run, correct?
I think we've pretty much had the same route. Where's John?
Yeah.
Same route.
Same route.
There's never,
Okay.
there's never been a change in the route.
Last year, there was a slight change in Lawrence where we wound through North Lawrence, but for this purpose, it really hasn't.
It
doesn't
sounds like
affect it.
the bigger change was there used to be a bar or some institution these people went to in Linwood, and it's no longer there.
And they were not drinking when they went to the bar, right?
Well, yeah, they were.
No, they were.
Of course.
Well, that's why I said we weren't
They
drinking.
were, but they were drinking at
so
the bar.
It's
They
in
were
the
drinking
brewery,
out on the
so that's
streets.
what it is. Okay.
Well, it started in the bottoms in Kansas City at Boulevard Brewery. It went to the Free State Brewery in Lawrence, so it got the name Brew to Brew.
Brew to brew. So, but as we stop, we're drinking along the way.
Mike, I can give you
Well,
30
some
examples
of them are,
the
some of them
largest
aren't, yeah.
charities in Kansas City that all come with food and dinner and drinks.
I get it.
So
I get it.
Don't
When
get
you're
caught up on the
getting
wrong
the people
thing.
in Linwood that are saying that they have a problem.
Right, I'm already past that. Linwood
Yeah.
doesn't want it.
Linwood doesn't
Done.
want it,
So,
we
not a
can't
problem.
supersede
Linwood
theirs.
doesn't want it. Done.
So we just avoid
Right,
Linwood.
hear that. And
Sounds
I
like
think
you thought of it.
Another congested area is 158th and Golden Road. So if we can get rid of that, and then I'm not aware of any problems except the railroad track where we're going to put more people.
But how does that fix that?
If you approve this run for this year, I would like to have a meeting with the sheriff and see what we can work out on our part to help him out with our people to make this a safer and
Mm.
less stressful event.
Right. I mean,
Last year
I'd
we
much
didn't have
rather.
any personnel in the right
promise the
places.
world, but I can do what I can to make this a safe run. But like I said, these people that are young, I was young once, you were all young once. Think back when you was 21 years old. We didn't run like what they do now. But think back of the partying they do, college. Think back to your college days. And that's what these guys are. They're the men and women that they're young
That's
men and
making me
women.
even more inclined to vote
This is
I'd like to
probably
hear from the sheriff.
Yeah, this is probably more a question I'd have for the sheriff is that if they were maybe able to make some modifications, recommendations, additional staff, would you be willing to at least take that meeting? Because I think we're willing, at least I'm willing to support if the sheriff thinks that those things can be remediated.
We
If he
can
doesn't
have-
believe they can be remediated, that's
We
a
have
whole
some
other
residents that aren't real happy with this.
Yeah, the residents were very upset over some
Right.
damage to their property and
In
being
summary,
disrespected.
in summary, we participated for many years, and again, nobody's knocking the organization and what you do. It's a great thing.
It is.
Unfortunately, like you said, it's some of the runners or some of the support teams that are involved that create the problems. To say that there's never been problems before is incorrect. Typically, it's something that we've tried to handle internally, talk down an angry resident, something like that. Typically, what happens is either that day after the race or the following day, we field calls from all throughout southern Leavenworth County complaining about this issue, that issue, alcohol containers left in along the roadway, thrown in yards, bushes, that type of thing. Last year just seemed to be a cataclysmic event in that there's a lot of bad things where we had people on railroad tracks, so the train traffic stopped. We had outhouses deposited in an individual's driveway. We had people urinate and defecating on yards and that type of thing. I'm willing to make changes or review it. The solution of bypass in Linwood, absolutely agree with. The problem with that is you get 4,000 runners, or a quarter of them at a time running down K32. You're going to have to get a permit from KDOT in order to allow that. There's a bike race that happens on the northern part of the county, and all they do is cross U-73, and they have to get a permit in order to do that. So, that's a concern where we're trading one bad thing for potentially another bad thing where you get a bunch of runners on K32.
Yeah. Sheriff, can I make a comment?
Sure.
There are, I think, 2,000 runners, but there's a dozen different start times that are staged 10 minutes apart.
I understand that.
And these runners are all different capabilities, and by the time you get to the second stage, you may not see the guy on 32 may not see the guy in front of him, and it's not like a cluster of 2,000 runners down the street.
There's about 30 runners on the road at one time.
We understand
on a
that.
Sunday.
We understand
Yes.
that.
On a Sunday.
And if I may, there's no question that it was a problem last year. This has gone on for so many years. We make donations to the Parks and Rec for the county. What we'd like to suggest is avoiding Linwood, but we'd also suggest that if at this late date, we've got these people signed up and paid, if we don't make the appropriate changes, we would volunteer to forget it. We'd like to have the permit this year because of the timing of it. We're doing our best to do what we can. In fact, the sheriff in Johnson County has told me that he's willing to supply as many volunteer officers, off-duty officers as possible that you need. We could have one at each stage that would control anybody abusing common sense. I think all that's required, and Sheriff, you could correct me, for them to have arrest capability, it would take an invitation from Leavenworth County to supply more off-duty officers. Well,
Sheriff, did you
and we
say
would
that,
pay for it.
Just a second. Sheriff, did you say that there were open containers thrown in people's yards?
Empty containers.
Empty containers that had, obviously, they're
At one
empty.
time had substance in it.
Yes, so as you're running, you're having alcoholic beverages?
We've already got 4 volunteers who are going to drive 2 different cars. The magnets on the side of the cars are going to say litter picker-uppers because your mother isn't here. And so these people are going to follow the runners, remind them not to litter, pick up their litter. We know there's litter, and our aid station people go, in their immediate area and pick up. But it's 44 miles, so we're not getting all of it. But if we have people driving the cars behind the runners, then I think we can get the majority of it. And I know there are some residents at 254th Street, and I've talked to all of them over the years multiple times. So I was thinking we could just put lots of people right there guarding their area, guarding all of their houses so that nobody parks, nobody throws a beer can, nobody goes.
I just want to say something. Representing that area, I can tell you that if you brought this up to the people down in that area, knowing the people in that area, I am certain that there would be a significant number of people that would have significant questions about this.
Well, and to that regard, one of my concerns and the position that I took was it's been a hard year for people on Golden Road, especially on the west half of this.
Tornado.
Houses were destroyed, and they're being rebuilt as we speak. I don't want one more event that they have to deal with that potentially will push them over the edge or create any type of problems for them. At the end of the day, if the board says you're going to approve it, we'll be diligent and we'll work together and we'll try to find an end around. But obviously, what happened last year cannot happen again, and frankly, will not happen again.
If we got a permit approved this year, so that we could go ahead with the donations we generated and the people that we've already got registered, and if there are any incidents, then we can just shut it down. We will get our permit before we open registration, and we'll go someplace else, or we just won't have the event at all.
Okay. All right. Anything else?
I'm just curious, was there any, so this operates through Douglas County, it operates through Johnson County. Any other
Jackson
issues?
County.
Jackson County.
Missouri.
I don't know if it doesn't touch
It
Jefferson.
doesn't go through Johnson County.
It doesn't go through Johnson?
Just Jackson, Leavenworth, and Douglas.
Douglas. Wyandotte.
Yeah, excuse me, Wyandotte, yeah.
I was going to say.
But they're all in Kansas.
Right. But Wyandotte is.
Excuse me, except for
I was trying to
the
connect
start
the
is in
dots.
Douglas.
Right.
For about 5 minutes.
Sorry,
One
Wyandotte.
block.
Yeah, one block of Douglas,
In
of
Missouri.
Jackson County.
Okay.
So it's 44 miles, of which how much is comprised of this proposed route through Leavenworth?
Through
If you were to avoid Linwood.
Through Linwood?
Around Linwood.
You mean in the county?
Yeah,
Yes.
how many miles in the county?
Oh, in the county or Linwood?
In the county.
In the county.
About 30, 28.
Yeah.
What's the majority?
Somewhere between
Over
25 and
about
30.
30 miles, maybe. No, it would be less than that. It'd be 20.
But we know that Linwood is out of the question because the
Well, it
city of
depends.
Linwood
If
has
you go
done that.
K32 out of Bonner, it would shorten it. Instead, if you go down,
Well, some of it is on the levees. So some of it is, next to the railroad
Okay.
track or next to the river.
yeah, we figured that out on the railroad. So. Okay. Any other questions or comments during the public comment? We've heard from for and against. Anyone else wishing to speak? Then we'll close public comment and return to regular session. Commissioners have any other discussion on this?
I can still, when one of the reason number 3 is showing defiance to legitimate directives from law enforcement, that's pretty serious. I mean,
Like I said,
that is just,
It's a few people.
but I mean,
2,000.
I know.
That's
but
runners.
it
That's
is-
not the bigger. There's a larger audience if you think
Right.
about it, because beyond runners, if you've got
Right, when you have okay,
shuttles
it
or
is.
people in
That's the
cars.
people that you have no
Volunteers.
control
Right,
over. You
volunteers.
have
The people
control
in
over
the
the
cars are
safety
also
of and the
runners.
conduct of or whatever, the runners.
Right.
But
Well, I
it's
think-
who the runners are bringing with them or the vehicles that are coming along or the spectators and all that. I'm just saying, I have a huge, when I'm sitting here looking that lack of consideration of property owners, showing defiance to legitimate directives from law enforcement, and then you say that you have addressed the management and monitoring,
Don't forget the train.
and the train, yeah,
Oh.
shutting down the railroad. Whoa,
I identify the teams and I throw them out of the race.
Okay.
So the
The
teams
only
that caused
people we haven't
problems
heard
last
from
year
is
and the
the
year before
FAA.
aren't coming back.
So,
Yeah, we haven't heard from them yet. But
anyways,
I'd like to make a motion that we deny case number DEV-20-004, temporary special use permit for brew to brew.
So, I think there's always going to be some contingency of people that are a problem in anything that you do.
Mm-hmm.
The report that you just gave is probably not unlike, other reports we get on a Saturday.
St.
That's
Patrick's
just,
Day parade in
that
Leavenworth,
happens.
Kansas.
Now, to what degree and where it happened, and if the organization's willing to make additional investment and oversight, I'm a second chance kind of person when you think about how much good they do.
it is, I understand.
There's not a lot of charities out there. If anybody knows that can
the
raise
to be minimum.
$10,000, more or less closer to $100,000.
And I don't want to put the sheriff on the spot, but if the sheriff is willing to work with them and try to figure out a secondary plan.
I'm just saying, because there needs,
Again, if it doesn't work, the work between us and the sheriff, if it doesn't work this year, then we'll just voluntarily go away. But, as Nancy said, any parade, whether it's the St. Patty's in Leavenworth or the Chiefs in Kansas City, there's going to be some people that don't act right.
But I've been to the St. Patty's every year just since about the inception for Leavenworth, and I can assure you that people do not destroy people's property. They do not block the railway. They do not. I mean, they do not.
I think I'll argue with you on that.
Well, the outhouse issue was the porta potty company delivered them to the wrong place. So when Officer Thorne called me and told me about it, I had them come back out and move them to the proper place.
You know, the people in this area don't want this, so I think it would be...
You made your motion. I just need a second.
I did make a motion.
I have a second for Mr. Stevens' motion?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on this?
I think it's a worthy, your charitable goal, the things you do. We all support that. But there's consequences to actions that happen. So even though you say all these things, the time is of essence, we're very close to this time, I don't believe there's time to come up with a whole new plan, and I don't think the people in that area, if you send it down another road, that is not going to make people down in that area
I've
happy
actually
either.
got all of these things
So-
implemented, and I've already mapped it out.
Well, I'm just telling you that I don't think it's sufficient, and I don't think, I just think it's going to have to be denied. That's my opinion. Well,
And I think what I have to say is that Sheriff Dedeke kind of, as he spoke, and maybe Shirley's out here, he can kind of nod or say no. He indicated that was almost like the icing on the cake last year. That said, that's it, that we're done. That years before, they had to deal with every year the residents upset and complaining and calling and wanting something done, and I have, we haven't been here a long time, but in a year I have yet to see Sheriff Dedeke come in and say no to something. This is the first. I don't know if in the past he's often nixed, but I'm just saying that's what I kind of have to think about and listen to, is that over the years, and I don't think I've ever seen him do that. I've never seen him come in and recommend to deny a permit.
But and then you have the mayor also of Linwood asking us.
He did offer to work.
When was the race last year?
Did offer to work with.
It's always the first weekend in April. This year it was moved to the last weekend in March.
Yeah.
And when was the tornado?
The other thing you have to understand is when I talked to Karen Kane last year after the race, she said, you're welcome to come through Linwood if you provide additional assistance.
I got this email yesterday from the mayor.
Right,
Karen
I know
Kane.
that.
No, so their recommendation, the city's recommendation is not to allow you to come through.
But we won't go through.
Well, but you're right. This, what we're being asked to vote on is routing you through Linwood.
Okay.
But we're saying we won't go through Linwood.
This temporary use permit routes you through Linwood.
If you could vote on the fact that we won't go through Linwood.
Well, we're not voting on that. We're voting on this.
Well, what I was going to do is make a motion to table it today until the sheriff could work with them and see if they could come up with a resolution. If not...
Well, we already have a motion and a second on the table, so we'll have to vote on that and see how that goes.
No, didn't we have that conversation once upon a time? You can make a motion after another motion.
You can, but
Counselor.
The second has to be withdrawn.
Okay,
Well,
so
let's vote and see if we can resolve this.
But again, that's not, if you don't hear another motion, then you don't know if you would change your mind.
Exactly.
Well, wait, there's a motion on the floor.
Senior Counselor?
Gentlemen, if you'd like to tie yourself in knots, strictly follow Robert's Rules of Procedures. Why don't you just have some additional discussion, perhaps hold your motion in advance, and it appears you might want to have some additional discussion and conduct that discussion.
My additional discussion is...
Well, why don't we just vote on this motion?
Well,
let's hear Commissioner Bolton.
My suggestion is going to be that we allow the sheriff to see if he can work out an agreement with them that's satisfactory to the sheriff's department and the runners and Linwood officials. And if they can come to an agreement they all agree on, then we pick it up again next week.
So when you talk about timing, so for example, if we were going to say, hey, we would love for you to have a work session with our sheriff and his team, and you're going to avoid Linwood, and you're going to put these remediation factors in place, which is get porta potties where they should have gone, and it's to get cars following people to make sure there's no littering, and to do everything we can to improve the event as we got your feedback, we made mistakes, here's how we'd like to remediate them. I would like to see if we can get the sheriff and his team on board with what you're proposing, knowing those 3 or 4 or 5 things, and if we can get his support, and we no longer think it's a safety issue, then I'd like to vote on that.
I think I can resubmit a map by the end of the day. The new course, avoiding Linwood.
But again, it's also those other things we talked about, which is you've got cars trailing the racers, you've got additional. You mentioned additional support, other counties, right, where they would provide additional off-duty sheriffs.
Why are we going to bend over backwards?
Because it's $80,000 in a world where we can't raise money for anything. Very well.
We raise money for a lot of things.
I just really, it's hard, and everybody on this board knows that I am all about charitable organizations and things, but I cannot get past the fact that Sheriff Dedeke, he's opposed. I mean, Major Shirley.
The high sheriff.
Commissioner, he's opposed, rightly so.
And this is...
Major Shirley.
I think, to be fair, this isn't specifically the position of the sheriff. This is a collective position of the people in Linwood, the people along the K-32 corridor with whom we've dealt with after recent races where we've had issues. So what we're looking at is the possibility of assuring that come the Monday morning following this, we're not dealing with the same issues all over again and having to say to the same people, and to echo the sheriff's comment, the K-32 corridor's been through quite a bit this year. So to tear off that scab is something that we're not in a big hurry to do. And again, not to speak for the sheriff, but he would speak with these individuals in reference to moving forward with this. But at the same time, with the issues we've had in the past, he's made a decision. The mayor of the city of Linwood has made a decision. Whether it goes through the city of Linwood or whether it skirts the very edge of it, I don't think the situation will be quelled simply by skirting the edge of it. I understand Commissioner Shimke's concerns about raising funds. We're all involved in charitable contributions, giving back to the community. Working in law enforcement is part of giving back to the community. At the same time, you put it all together, and the public safety and the needs of the south end of the county, those are what we're trying to represent here today. You're welcome to make the decision that you see fit, but the facts are as they've been presented at this point. Moving forward, they could change. That all weighs on the decision you're prepared to make today.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
How many years does this?
25.
25 years?
Could we, Commissioner Shimke, have that ability to talk to the sheriff within the next few days and try to resolve it? And if we can, we can. And if we can't...
Mr. Chairman, can we call for the question? Can we vote?
Are we good with this now?
I mean, if they want to, as an organization, go to the sheriff's office, go to Linwood, go to anybody else with these list of 10 things or 12 things, why would I stop them from doing that? Why wouldn't I table it and see them next week?
Well, it's not...
But I'm just representing the people in this area, and this is what they want.
So you're not withdrawing your second, or you're not withdrawing your motion. So voting.
Aye.
Nay.
You're voting for it?
I'm voting.
His motion.
For my motion.
Okay.
Is to deny.
Your motion is deny. That's correct. All right. You voted aye.
Doug, don't do that to me.
Aye.
Nay.
Aye.
Aye.
Nay.
I'm voting nay. I'm voting aye for support the sheriff's recommendations. And
same.
I'm not going to vote for any thing that's an
Well, to be clear, if we couldn't get the sheriff over the
deal. So
finish line, I wouldn't support it either. So I appreciate what you said very much. Thank you. We appreciate the time.
Okay, we're ready for Mr. Weber.
Oh, no. I'm still here.
You're still here. Okay. That's right. We got the fees. I'm sorry, Crystal.
That's okay. I can't miss another one. I've missed a gazillion because we can't.
Anybody want a Mentos for lunch?
All right, Commissioners. I have a request for board action to adopt the planning and zoning fee schedule to include a fee of $800 for accessory dwelling units and a fee of $100 for floodplain development permits, and to also implement the accessory dwelling unit policy, which is the second page of your RBA there. The ADU policy is what we talked about last week during the work session. There was one minor change that I added to it, and that's just that the use of a temporary unit that would be used solely for the building of a home. Mm-hmm. It is not going to remain. It's not a barn home. It's a temporary dwelling unit. That would be allowed for 1 year or less and would not be required to pay the ADU fee. They would be required to sign an affidavit and agree that the structure would be removed within a year.
Within a year after completing the home, or a year after?
A year after putting it in.
It might get a little tight if you're building your own home.
Talking about a mobile home?
Could be.
Could be.
Tiny home.
Camper.
Something like anything on wheels. Okay.
Anything shipping container.
Anything temporary. Within the affidavit that we would create, it would have provisions that it needed to have a fully functioning bathroom, sort of. So if it was like an RV or something, and you have to dispose of that appropriately, and all of those sorts of things, and failure to abide by that would.
Well, if you're building your own home and you're moving out there, a year doesn't.
Other than a bus for 3 years.
I think what we could do is allow for a renewal process where they have to just come in and extend it so that staff could review that.
Because you can renew your building permit, right?
Yeah, you can renew your building permit one time for a year. So
you would just renew that along with it?
All right. And we discussed all this in the work session, so I'll entertain a motion. Consider amending planning and zoning fee schedule.
Motion to amend planning and zoning fee schedule to include a fee of $800 for accessory dwelling units and a fee of $100 for floodplain development permits.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on the fee schedule?
Do we need to add the renewal aspect?
That'll be part of the affidavit. We'll just make it part of that form.
All right. Voting?
Aye.
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 Perfect.
Thank you, Crystal.
Thank you, Crystal. Sorry.
That's okay.
We went on and on today.
It wouldn't be a Wednesday if we didn't.
Actually, we were supposed to be at the Port Authority a couple of us.
You missed that.
We're going to miss that.
You missed that.
We've done Miss Rotary.
They're just going to have to change the day to the Port Authority for us to make it.
I'm still Miss Rotary, even if it's for
5 minutes.
Yeah.
Mr. Weber, how are you today?
Good. How you doing?
All right.
You've been pretty popular in Topeka lately.
Yes.
A lot of talk about you.
You're professional.
All of us combined. I have two things here. First is the request for a board order to be approved for 2 tax abatements due to the tornado damage. These 2 properties just recently got their insurance information and submitted. They both meet the criteria for substantially destroyed on there. So I'm looking for approval of this board order, which is for both these properties. If you have any questions on that.
Pretty self-explanatory, I'd say. Entertain a motion on that?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve the attached resolution granting tax abatement for homes substantially destroyed in the May 28th tornado. Do you need the
tax ID number?
Just the board order, I think it has the exhibit.
Board order 2020-2.
Yes.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? on the tax abatement. Voting?
Aye.
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 We got to start putting those in the action requested.
What's that?
So we got to start putting the board order in the action request.
Yeah.
I'm looking at what you submitted and where.
This is
The next page.
Page 2? Page 3? And on page 1.
We don't have it on.
Okay.
Oh, it's in our agenda.
It's in the agenda. It's not on.
It's in the.
I'm past the one sentence
order
form.
when I submitted this.
Our staff, I'm on the 9 pages.
I learned.
Yeah.
I should have read it.
Sorry.
I'm sorry. I should have read it.
All good.
When I asked for the motion, I should have read it. Okay. Moving on.
The second thing is we're sending change of value notices Friday, or supposed to hit the mail Friday.
I won't get the mail Saturday then.
So they're due on or before March 1st, so we have to have them out by Friday's latest. The property owners have 30 days to appeal from the mail date on the valuation notice.
Seems like we just did this.
Doesn't it?
Yeah.
A year flies.
It was a
doesn't
year
it?
ago, but yes.
My, how it blows.
The total county valuation went from what we certified last year, what I certified to the clerk in May, went up 5.52%. 2% of that, 2.02% of that was to new construction and remodeling, and 3.5% was due to revaluation. I presented in my last quarterly report sales, average sale prices.
Yeah.
Kind of gave some background on that. The Leavenworth City went up 4.72%, 3.44% was revaluation. Baser, 6.59%, most of that was new construction. The highest was Linwood, but they had some new construction going in there with a low valuation that makes a high percentage change.
So what did you say Baser was?
Baser is 6.59%.
6 point? Okay.
Yeah, most of that was new
You got a sheet
construction.
in there, Dave.
Oh, well, I got a mess up here. I'm sorry. I know.
Rural was 5.66%. You can compare those to last year's. I mean, the total county this year was 5.52%. Last year was 8.3% for a total increase. So it was less than last year. The numbers between the cities in the rural areas are a little closer together. There's it's a little more uniform this year than it was last year. Last year, the southern part of the county bore the brunt of it more, but Baser simply where you have most of the new construction going on, so that's why that's higher percentage.
See,
and I did tell you, this includes all property, but this is assessed value, and about 73% of our assessed value is residential. So this is primary, residential is what really drives these numbers.
We are all very painfully aware. Thank you for the reminder, though.
Home sales. Comparables. But there's a lot of stuff going on in Topeka. We maybe do something different next year, huh?
How many? It's not appeal. What's the action they take when they get it? They have 30 days.
Well, there's 30 days they can. Yeah, it's an appeal.
It is an appeal. So I was saying, how many appeals did we have last year?
I'm trying to think off the top of my head. It was between 1 to 2% of the properties. We have 31,000 parcels. It was between 1 and 2% of that. So it was a little up. Of course, the values were up, so it was a little up.
8.3 last year average.
How many of those were successful, Bob?
Generally, they run around 40 to 60%. I mean, it just depends on the year. We don't have a number we're shooting for in that.
I realize. I just was curious because I think it's great for people to understand that, again, of the people that appeal, which is your right to do so, 50%.
In that 50% range somewhere. Okay. But, a lot of them, the successful ones, are ones that bring in information that we didn't know about the property.
Right. Assumptions can be bad.
So,
You only had 400 or 500 last year protests, appeal? 400 or 500 out of 31,000. It's pretty good.
Yep, it is.
So how I just go back and rerun the numbers. So it seemed like a lot. It strikes me it was around 2%.
Less than 600.
And that's the way it's been. It was down to about 1% when values weren't doing much.
When you say 2%, and you say 40 to 60% had an adjustment on their property taxes, does that include the people that elevated on up to the next step, or are you just including?
No, I was just taking our level. I don't know what it is.
Are you trying to take
there? We don't really have too many.
To the Board of Tax Appeals. You can go up to the next level.
Oh, the BOTA?
It's small claims and then to the Board of Tax Appeals. We're still doing a couple hearings from last year because they get delayed. I've got some in May from a year ago.
At BOTA?
At BOTA.
Okay.
But there's only maybe 4 or 5. Well, one property owner took a number of them, so I should refrain that. There's only about 4 or 5 property owners. One person had a lot of rentals, and he took like 13 of them or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Anything section you have one? Section level you have one.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thanks for getting this to us.
All right, so we'll
be a busy week next week.
Yeah, we'll hear from some people next week.
Your phones will probably start ringing.
The green envelopes come out. And then, of course, John will have it in the paper, so that'll give him a heads up before the mail comes, which is good.
He aims to please.
Green envelope still?
They're white envelopes.
Oh, they're white. They're sneakier. You used to know what it was.
We have a company that...
Is it just me, or did we not talk about putting an informational piece in those a year ago?
We mail lots of stuff out. We could be in that one.
It's too late.
It's too late. Are we just chit-chatting
Too late
now,
for this one, but there's other stuff we mail out, too.
The notices.
Are we just chit-chatting now, or are we conducting business?
The notices do have the appeal information on them.
Yes.
Right. What I'm saying is it doesn't provide information relative to how Leavenworth County scores to the other 105 counties. How
he was going to put stuff in there like our mill levy compared to other counties and more information about.
We can put that on the website.
Or put it up here next week.
How much
Get a big poster and put it up here.
Well, or even drop the screen and put it up while we're having our meeting.
Well, appreciate all you do.
Yes, we do.
Thank you, Bob.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Thanks for the update.
Yeah, thanks for sticking with us.
So I guess we're Port Authority. Last week I went to the State of the City Baser. The mayor spoke. I went to the FFA fundraiser on Saturday morning. I went to the MARC meeting yesterday. And I have Baser City Council tonight and Fairmount Township tomorrow night. And I think that's all I got. Got anything?
Well, we had the
last
Thursday?
Yeah, I wasn't able to make that.
And that's all I have. I probably have more, but I can't think of it right now.
Yeah.
I was going to say, there's at least 2 or 3. The most relevant one for this update is Commissioner Cause and I met with the City of Lansing. I think we had a great work session last Friday. I think there are several scenarios that are being discussed. We are closely working with all of the joint board members to lock down the day and time. It's looking like next week, so we can continue to move things forward, hopefully have something that we can propose and working with our county councilor within the next number of weeks rather than maybe months, but sooner rather than later, and see if we can start working towards a solution rather than continuing the court cost and just cost.
I agree.
Yeah.
And
Financially and emotionally and all the others. So.
I'd like to ask either Commissioner Smith or our administrator or our counselor or Commissioner. We are going to be out of town. Or Commissioner Stephen, I'm going to be out of town. Commissioner Shimke's going to be out of town, and so is Commissioner Culberson on the proposed date, which is Monday.
Yeah, so the first part of next week, we've got a number of others traveling, so and we requested them to have this meeting as soon as possible. So we need to work through that.
But will you attend and represent so that, that at least we have one, and that would be 6:30 here? Is the proposed, or is that 6?
Yeah, I think it's going to be Monday evening. I think we're still, not everybody's been signed off on the location and time yet, but we're getting very close. So.
Right, but it'll be like 6:30 to 7 p.m.
Just let me know.
Yeah, it'll be Monday
and it'll be at the fire
And are they
station.
basically memorializing what they've already agreed to at that meeting?
What will be happening at that meeting is it's a meeting of the joint board, and the request has been made, and we'll see if they just make that determination to rescind the decision they made for one of the appointments
For Delaware Township representative.
so that Delaware Township can be represented on the board.
Our request and goal was to make sure that joint board, and then ultimately the decisions made for the fire board have all stakeholders represented.
Right.
Relative to
If
the
I'm in
entities.
town, I'll join Commissioner Smith.
And that's the request that we made, that the joint board reconvene and reconsider the decision that they made on the 21st.
Just let me know when and where. I'll be
And then
there.
I think if that's successful, then obviously the next step will be for them to schedule the next fire board meeting, in which case all would be in attendance. And
Right, we will be there then, but we'd just like to have county commissioners at that presentation.
Well, they
meeting to
should be
listen.
there.
Yes,
And
we appreciate it. Thank you.
we're in D.C., Jeff and I on county business, so I can't,
And I'm in San Diego on personal business.
I know, next week, do your best without me.
It's going to be lonely
I'll
here.
be there. You have anything to update?
Let's see.
Chad said.
That was
That was it?
City Commission meeting last night, and Mental Health Task Force, they met yesterday. The Live Well Leavenworth and Suicide Prevention Coalition yesterday, and phone call session thing with workforce.
Oh,
fellows.
okay.
I always call them job service.
Yeah, so.
Okay. Mr. Culberson, you have anything?
Just not much other than what Chad said. We're going out to D.C. Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, I think.
I do have a report on the House Bill 2517 was marked up. They added commercial property and they added an amendment on grain bins, but there were some problems with the amendment, so they're working out those details and it's standing for a vote on the House floor.
Okay.
I can't believe you get all that many lawyers together there to get a problem. That's
And
crazy.
I had
Thanks, David.
That's crazy.
one more tidbit of information that came out of the Live Well meeting yesterday that I thought was interesting is Dr. McBratney, who is the medical director for the health department, reported out that on the coronavirus, which is not, there was their erroneous report that it was, in Kansas. That is not correct. But that the number of flu reported in the state and in Leavenworth County is down substantially.
That's good.
And they believe that it is as a result of, if anything positive can come out of the coronavirus, is that people are now washing their hands diligently, instead of that they believe that it's because of people washing their hands. We have close to 100 fewer cases of flu the same time as last year during the same time period this year, and they're.
Yeah, wait till me and Chad get back from D.C.
People being
I was going to say, you'll probably bring it back.
So it's really cool that flu's down, which is really awesome.
You act like that's a place where people from all over the world converge. That's not
or anything. Which like it's an internet.
I survived L.A. We'll be fine.
How'd you hold your breath though?
Okay.
That's hard. That's hard.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Yep, we're adjourned.